Are you ready to up your e-commerce and admin dashboard game? Learn an amazing CMS that isn't headache to use and use the best stack to do it. Next 14, Stripe and TypeScript. Hi there and welcome to a new build and deploy video where we'll build Next.js powered e-commerce site with an admin panel so good that even Tony Stark would feel a little jealous. We will develop an attractive homepage that follows the best design practices. We have a hero section, categories, new collections, ongoing deals, and shop features, all complemented by a crisp footer. We'll create a shop page that even guests can visit, allowing users to explore products, apply category filters, see more products with pagination, which is key for performance in e-commerce projects. Develop a concise product details page with product recommendations. Implement an add to cart system, which works without authentication. Users can adjust quantity, get instant updates to the pricing, or delete products. Implement user authentication with a secure login and registration process, including password recovery. Develop a streamlined and minimalistic checkout process, which is optimized for the best user experience and most purchases. Securely collect and process payments. And you'll also develop a user-friendly account page, which allows users to update personal information, see past purchases, current orders, order details, and of course, a logout option. That's just the start. The real fun is the admin panel, from where you can control absolutely anything on your shop website, starting from custom pages, where you can directly add new pages, tailor them to your liking by adding diverse sections, authoring text, images, and more. Easily add new products, oversee orders, add, remove, or update categories in real time, manage customers, as well as page redirects for optimal navigation and user experience. Customize the header and footer, and even manage SEO from the admin panel. That's insane, right? It's like having the best parts of WordPress without being limited by it, and having all the best Next.js options at your fingertips. This is all made possible with Payload CMS, a headless CMS and open source framework that optimizes your dev workflow by providing you with the backend functionality while allowing you to customize your app and add additional functionalities. So build and deploy a fast, secure, and scalable app in just days that would normally take months. It is the fastest way to develop and power anything from websites to internal tools. Define your schema in TypeScript and get a full backend and CMS admin panel for free. In about a month, Payload will put Vercel in their free tier. Because of that, Payload will essentially become the official Next.js CMS. You heard it here first. That's gonna make it that much more important to understand and therefore future-proof your skills. And speaking of Next.js, recently we have added 2 special bonuses to our Ultimate Next.js 14 course. One is a guide to advanced features, powerful libraries, and robust security practices in Next 14. And the other, most common Next.js FAQs answered. Both of these bonuses offer short and precise explanations with the ability to dig deeper into it with mini projects. So if you want to enroll and join over 2,500 developers who already joined and love it, go to jsmastery.pro/next14 or click the link in the description to enroll. Now let's get started building our incredible app. To get started with building our great e-commerce application, this time, we won't start by creating a new empty folder on our desktop. Rather, we'll leverage an existing open source tool, Payload, a CMS that works. It's all TypeScript, all Next.js, and it is fully open source. So in this video, not only will I teach you how to build our phenomenal tech-related e-commerce shop, but how to leverage Payload to build any kind of e-commerce or any kind of app that requires a CMS for that matter incredibly easily and scalably up to the enterprise level. The link to the website as well as the special starter we'll use is linked down in the description. And while we're here, let's give them a star. Now on top right, you can click Try Payload Cloud for 30 days. But don't worry, you'll be able to have your project up and running for much, much longer than 30 days. Soon enough, Payload, in collaboration with Vercel, will allow you to deploy your project completely free. And don't forget, Payload is completely open source, so you can always spin up your project on top of their codebase. With that said, let's click e-commerce to build a full e-commerce backend alongside a beautiful storefront integrated with Stripe, and ready to sell. Here, you'll have to register for a free account. You can do so by entering your email and password. Once you verify your account, you can log in. And we can continue where we left off by creating a new e-commerce project. Let's continue with GitHub. Connect and select your GitHub account, and then choose a repository name. And you can even choose whether you want to make it private or public. In this case, I'm going to make it public and click Clone Template. That's it. Payload is already creating the starter repo for you, which we'll be able to clone and continue building on top of. Here, you can choose your plan, and you can choose free trial, no credit card required. You can choose your project settings. In this case, I'm going to go EU, project name, project slug, template, and then the default domain, which you can do something like ecommerce_JSM.app. Of course, feel free to do something else by including JSM either before, later, in the middle, whatever you prefer. And let's click I agree and start free trial. As I said, even though there's a cost here to Payload Cloud, you will be able to have your project up and running in the future as well. But as I said, you'll be able to have your project deployed indefinitely with the free tier on Vercel, or you can always build on top of their open source repo. With that said, let's wait until our project is deployed. There we go. And now the project configuration is happening. And you can see the build logs below. And in just a couple of minutes, our new project is deployed. Let's click this URL. As you can see, our entire template is here, although right now the database is empty, so we want to seed it with some new products. And we're going to do that later on within the dashboard. But the full login, account creation, products, even checkout, all of that has been set up for us. But considering all of this has already been done, you might be wondering, what will I do? And what will I learn? With JavaScript Mastery, my goal has always been to make you an independent developer. What does that mean? Well, it means that if an employer or a client comes to you and says, hey, I need an enterprise-level e-commerce store for this specific category of products, I want you to be able to say, I've done this based off of a phenomenal open source project, and I can make it completely custom for you. And that's exactly what I'm going to teach you in this video. So here, we can go to our main branch. And this shows you that Payload is not some kind of a low-code, no-code tool that non-developers use. Payload is built for developers, where we use this as the starter template and then build custom functionality on top of it. So our next step is to get this running on our local machine, which we can do by going to code. I would recommend downloading and using GitHub Desktop, but even if you don't have it, you can simply copy this URL. Once you do it, open an empty Visual Studio Code window, go to View, and then Terminal, and simply press Git clone, and then paste this URL, and press Enter. This now cloned into e-commerce, which means that you can cd into e-commerce, and then press code dot, which is going to open it up within a new Visual Studio Code window. So I close the old one and open this one in full screen. To start running our project, we first need to install all of the necessary dependencies. So once again, open up your terminal and then run npm install --legacy--peer--deps. This is needed to install some older versions of dependencies in case there are some. You can also use yarn. Once you do it, press enter. While the dependencies are getting installed, let me introduce you to the starting structure that we have right now. You can revisit this GitHub repository that was created for you, and then you can read the README. Let's go through it together just a bit. This is the official Payload e-commerce template. Use it to power e-commerce businesses and online stores of all sizes. This repo includes a fully working backend, enterprise-grade admin panel, and a beautifully designed production-ready website, which, by the way, we're going to customize as well. This template is right for you if you're selling physical products, digital assets, or access to content like courses or premium articles. Now, there's an important point I want to make. This video will not only teach you how to build this e-commerce site. This video also has a secondary learning agenda, which is maybe even more valuable in the long run. While going through this template together, we will inevitably learn how to read and collaborate within large repositories. This repo is huge. It has a lot of custom files, pages, folders, custom functionalities, styles, specific file and folder architecture, rules, and more. And trust me when I say this, in many cases, working in a company or for a client is much different than our typical YouTube videos where we build something from scratch. Typically what's going to happen is you will be dedicated to a specific already existing codebase, which you will have to learn in a couple of days and start contributing the code to. So while going through this repo, I'm going to teach you all the tips and tricks and practices I've learned over the years of how to more easily get started working on a large existing code base. So I hope you're excited for that as well. And while mentioning this, I also thought about a third really important learning point. And the third point is that in case you want to build your own e-commerce store in the future, you'll be able to learn from best practices from Payload's engineers. They've spent a lot of time thinking on how to make their product the best it can be. So let's quickly go over the template. We can quickly start it by cloning it, and then we can go into the development by running npm or yarn dev, and then opening localhost. And that's it. Changes made in source will be reflected on your app. Then we also need to set up Stripe, and we also need to check out some production guidance once we are ready to deploy. Here, they go deeper into how everything works. So we're going to have different collections specified for functionalities such as users, products, orders, pages, media, and categories. We'll also have some globals like the header and the footer. And the footer will have the access control. We'll have different role-based systems such as admin and customer. We'll need to figure out how to manage the shopping cart and the products, integrate Stripe and connect it. Finally, how to check it out, how to go behind a paywall, how to build using their layout builder, how it handles SEO, redirects, websites, cache, ejections, and Docker, seeding the database, and much more. So this is big, this is exciting, and now let's start dissecting it and customizing it together. Our dependencies have been installed, and before we go ahead and run it, let's quickly check out the env.example. So here we have some environment variables, which we can copy, and we can create a new file called .env, to which we can paste all of these demo variables, and here we'll append our additional variables later on as well. And by additional, for example, I mean this database URI, which you can get access to by going to your Payload project, clicking Database, and then you can copy this Mongo connection string. Once you're back, you can simply override this one right here. Next, we need to choose our payload secret, which is just a randomized string of characters. I'm going to do JSM custom secret. Whatever you choose, make sure to refer to it later on once we deploy our project. Now we can close this, open up our terminal, and run npm run dev. This is going to start a project on localhost 3000. So let's go ahead and open it up. And there we go. We are almost up and running. But before we can see our products, we have to actually add them. So let's click Go to Dashboard, and let's create our admin user. I'm going to use the same email I used before to open up my Payload account, choose my password, confirm it, add a name, such as Adrian. We can select a role, which in this case will of course be admin, and purchases will be empty. That's it. Let's click Create. Now, the first thing we'll have to do is seed our database. That means add a few existing products so we can see and test application's full functionalities. So click Seed your database, and it says seeding. Once that is done, simply go back to localhost 3000. As you can see, our full store is now up and running. We have a nice looking landing page with all of our products, and we can also click Shop Now to see all products. Now, there's one thing I want to point out. If you go to a specific product, you might notice that the website feels a bit slow. This is only happening in development. Once you actually deploy it, it's going to be incredibly fast, as of course, it's using the latest and greatest of Next.js. So this is a typical product page. You can add it to cart. This is your cart. You can go to checkout. And you can only go to checkout after we connect Stripe. But as you can see, all of this is looking pretty bare bones, right? This image is huge, the design is just minimal, and it doesn't feel like a comprehensive e-commerce application. Definitely not what I promised, right? So now our real job starts. We're gonna turn this into this. Tech Haven, a clean, minimalist, maybe a bit Apple-inspired tech e-commerce store. You can shop by category, you can see all of the products within those categories. As you can see, everything is launching super quick. The product page looks great with related products. You can add things to cart, immediately view them within the cart, and then check out. We even have this completely custom, beautiful registration and login screen. A lot of stuff is coming in this video, and so far, we have just been laying out the foundation, which means creating all the backend systems necessary to run our e-commerce stores. We have created an admin dashboard. We have a complete login and registration screen. We can even create new customers. We can add items to the cart, check out and pay later on once we enable Stripe, and even add new products through our admin interface. Not only products, but manage the look and feel of our website, design, orders, media, categories, and so much more. Now, it's our turn to understand the code base and to slowly but surely and to start customizing it. So let's go through the folder structure. Within the source folder and then within app is where the majority of our application is. This is our Next.js shop app. Whatever you do here will modify your primary e-commerce store. And then within the payload folder is where you can modify the admin UI, the admin interface. The most important files here are the payload.config.ts file. Within here, you can see all of the routes that you can see on your admin dashboard, such as collections, endpoints about customers, products, seed, and so much more. And also the payload types, where we can have the types for all of our products, collections, and more, which means that in case you modify something within your collection, you'll have to add it here as well. And finally, we also have our API folder, which is right here within the app. And here we have all of the necessary e-commerce functionality endpoints, such as fetch doc. And this is how we fetch different pages, products, or orders. Or for example, fetch globals, which allows us to fetch header, footer, and the settings data. But as I said, we're going to go through everything together and fully explore it. Now, first things first, let's start by modifying the styles, meaning colors, fonts, and assets. So to modify some default styles, we can go to source, app, CSS, and then app.scss. Here, we can change the font body from System UI to a font known as Just. And we can also do sans serif right here. And we can do the same thing for font-just and also say that that's just and sans serif. Next, we can go ahead and modify the body, which is right here. The font family is going to be font just. We're going to also add a padding of 0. Usually this is known as CSS reset. We just reset some default styling that the browser provides. We also want to change the default color. So we can say var --color -dark -500. And we can set the display to be equal to flex and a flex flow of column. Below, we can modify the main class to say flex is 1, 1, and then auto. This is going to be helpful with our future layout. In the selection, we can also change our color. So we can say var --color -dark 500. And in the Moz selection, we can do --color -dark -50. Then we want to go down all the way to our p tag, And we want to simply delete the include mid break and set the margin to 0. In the OL and UL, we want to remove the padding and the margin. And we want to simply say margin is 0 and padding is 0, as well as a list style is going to be set to none. We don't want to have that ugly underline. For the A tag, we can change the color to be set to var color -- color -dark 500. And these are all the global changes that we have to make. Now, let's go back right here and let's go to the colors.scss. Here, we want to add some special brand colors for our application. So let's go all the way at the end and let's say brand colors. Of course, you can fully modify these later on. And here we can add colors such as -- color -dark -500 and then set a specific RGBA value like we did before. A link containing all of these code blocks that I will provide you is going to be linked down in the description. So feel free to refer to it, go to colors.scss, and then simply add this part right here. It's going to apply just a couple of colors, so to simplify our styling later down the line. There are also some small additional styling changes that I noticed that we have to make, and those are going to be within type.scss. Specifically, right here at the start, we want to reset the margin for all headings. Once again, this is something that you want to do quite often in your app if you're developing a custom design. We also want to remove the margins from every single H here, from all the headings, and within the include as well. So we can remove here, here, and repeat this for all headings. We want to have clean setup so we can start styling from scratch. H5 as well. And finally, H6. Now, we want to style the H4 a bit more since we're going to use it a lot. So we can change the font size to 30 pixels, the line height to 43 pixels, the font weight to 400, and finally, letter spacing to 0 EM. Once again, some small global changes to make our styling easier later on. And now we have to utilize the new font that we are about to import. We can do that by going to App and then Layout, following all of the best Next.js practices. By the way, I do have these little ESLint warnings. We're going to fix those later on. But for now, let's simply import Just, which is a font coming from next/font/Google. And then we can use it right here by saying const just is equal to just, which accepts an object of subsets set to an array of Latin. We're going to get two different weights. So that's going to be a weight of 400 and 700. And a variable for that font is going to be -- font-just. Finally, in the body right here, we can apply a class name equal to, it's going to be a dynamic string of just.variable. And we want to wrap the children right here within the main tag, because that's going to be the main HTML5 semantic content, and it's going to have a class name equal to main. Now, I know that a lot of this didn't make too much sense, but these were just some global style changes that we had to make to allow us to more easily turn this into this. You can see we're already a step closer because now the font is exactly as it is right here. Now, back within layout.tsx, you can see that we still have issues with ESLint and Prettier complaining about our line endings. Line endings are different on all different types of operating systems. So I'm on Windows, and that's most likely why it's complaining. So what you can do is you can press Ctrl or Command P and then type ESLint-rc and press Enter. This was just one of many tips that I will share throughout this video of how you can better utilize Visual Studio Code keyboard shortcuts. Of course, you can manually navigate to the file right here as well if that didn't work. Here, we have to add rules. That's going to be an object inside of which we need to say prettier /prettier, and then define that as an array where we have an error, comma, and then an object. End of line is going to be set to auto, like this. If you save it, it should look something like this. Rules, prettier, error, end of line, auto. And now it should no longer complain, as you can see right here. Now, there's one more thing we have to do before we go ahead and start implementing all of the additional functionalities. And that is import all of the assets we'll be using throughout the project. So in the description down below, in that same link where you can find all other code blocks, you'll also be able to find a link to a Google Drive containing all of the assets for our project. So simply download them, go to our files, remove the current public folder entirely, and then drag and drop the unzipped folder right here in the root of our directory, and click Copy Folder. You can see Payload CMS public is now here, and we can simply remove the prefix and just leave it as public. On Windows devices, this renaming process can take some time, but if you're in Mac, it should be much faster. And now that we have renamed our assets folder, we have the assets public, all the images and icons we're ever gonna need for this application. And I was also kind enough to include all the admin UI images. These are images that you don't necessarily need to use within the app, but you need to use them when you're uploading specific categories or products and so much more. So I included those as well. With that said, we're almost ready to start styling our application. But before we do that, I want to ensure that we understand the terminology of Payload. But before we do that, I want to ensure that we understand Payload's terminology. So if we go into Source and then App, you can notice that here we can see a couple of things. We can see blocks, components, heroes, providers, utilities. Now, what are those? Well, one of the most important aspects are called collections. And payload collections are defined through their configs. And you can define as many as your application needs. Each collection will scaffold a new collection automatically in your database of choice based on the fields that you defined. So you can think of collections as just typical database collections, where each one has a specific URL, it has some fields, labels, admin, and you can choose how you want to authenticate and upload those specific documents within that collection. On the other hand, we can also discuss globals. Globals are similar to collections, but they can only appear once, so they're one-off, and they're perfect for things like header navigations, site banners, or footers. So what do you say that we start by modifying a couple of globals? We can start by putting our browser side by side to our editor. Then we can go to Source, App, _ Components, and then we can find the header and go to the index.tsx. I'm going to zoom it out just a bit, pull this a bit over to the side, and expand the code so we can better see what we're doing. Inside of here, we can remove these classes, as well as the header now and the gutter, as we won't be using those components within our new modified header. Instead, what we will be using is import header component from /header component. And of course, now we have to actually create it. So let's go right here within our header. Let's remove this index.module.scss, and let's create a new folder called header component. Within it, we can create two new files, index.tsx, as well as an index.module.scss. This is going to be the styling for this specific component. Now, within here, we can run RAFCE. This is a shorthand to create a basic React component. In this case, we can call it header component, and then at the bottom, export default header component as well. With that done, we can go back to our index and we can ensure that the import is done correctly. But this time, no longer will we be displaying this entire header and the gutter and all of those things. We can simply return a React fragment. And then within it, we're going to render our own header component, just like so. And to it, we're going to pass the header. So we can say header is equal to header. This header is coming right here at the top where we're fetching it directly from Payload CMS. Soon enough, I'll teach you how we can modify it. And we can also remove these comments right here and say something like console.log error. There we go. So now we can slowly see how we're starting to modify our code base. Here, it's complaining about console log. So to fix this warning right here, we can go to ESLint-RC and then say no console off. This is going to ensure that it doesn't complain. Then we can move into our header component and actually define it. Now we know that it's going to be accepting the entire header, which is going to be of a type header, header like so, because we are using TypeScript. And the pretty cool thing about Payload is that they already created the types for us. So we can simply import the header by pressing Control space or Command space while selecting it, and we can import it from Payload, Payload-types. Within here, we can define our nav. That's an HTML5 semantic nav tag. Within it, we're going to use something known as a gutter, which we can import from //gutter. Within the gutters, we're going to have a link component, which of course has to be imported from next link. And within it, we're going to have a self-closing image with a source equal to /logo-black.svg, alt tag of logo. So we're just trying to display our logo. And if we click on it, the href is going to point to the home page, meaning just /. Now, if we save this, you can see that localhost is loading, but there still seems to be some problems right here when importing the header component. It says header component not found. That's because we're importing it as a named import, and here we have export default. So what we can do is simply modify it by doing a default import. If we now save it, you can see that our techie Tech Haven logo appeared on top. That's great. So now let's close the files which we don't need, and let's only have the header component index.ts open. Now let's continue with styling our navbar, which we can do by importing classes coming from /index.module.scss. Once we have it, we can define the class name right here by creating an array and then saying classes.header. So this is now going to correspond to the header class within the index module SCSS. So let's open it up by going to index.module.scss, and let's create a .header class that's going to have a padding of 36 pixels on top and bottom and 0 on left and right. So now you can see it just provided some spacing. Now we also have a warning here, but we're going to fix that later on. The next thing I want to focus on is adding a class name to this gutter, which is going to have a class name of classes.wrap. And this wrap is going to be a simple class where we can say .wrap. It's going to have a display of flex, align items of center, justify dash content of space between, and we want to wrap the content. So flex wrap is going to be set to wrap. We also need to set the gap between the elements in the navbar. So we can say gap, and we can use the CSS calc function where we can calculate the base right here divided by 2. So this is for the row gap, and now for the column gap, we can use the regular var -- base. There we go. So now we're applying that as well. But of course, between the gutter, we have a link. This link has a class name of logo. This link points to home, and the image has a source, but we can also give it a class name that's going to say classes.logo. So now if we go into our classes, we can do the .logo and simply provide a width of about 170 pixels. I found that to work the best. Now you can notice that my class names simply become 3 dots right here. This is not needed for this type of application, but I started using this because Tailwind classes can get so long, so it's easy to hide them. In this case, I'm going to turn this extension off so I can see the full class name. If you're wondering, the extension name is inline fold. There we go. Now we can see the classes, and of course, in this case, we can transition to using Next.js's image property coming from next image. There we go, just to make it a bit more optimized. But of course, in this case, we don't need to provide it a class name, rather just the width and height properties. So we can say width is 170 and height is about 50. And there we go, we have our optimized Next.js component. Now below this link, we want to render a header nav, which is going to be coming from /nav. And to it, we want to pass the entire header. And this header is coming through props. We're passing it from the original header page. Right below it, we also want to render a header mobile nav, to which we want to pass the header. Now this one we have to create by going to our header, and then within it, creating a new folder called mobile nav. Within it, we can create a new index.module.scss, as well as creating a new index.tsx. Right within it, we can run rafce, modify the index to mobile nav, save it, and then go back right here and import it by saying mobile nav is coming from /mobile nav. There we go. So now you can see, since it's pulling the default navigation, we already got some links right here. Now you can see that we maybe have a few links that we don't necessarily need here, like create account or login or even index, right? So what we can do is we can hide them. And let me show you how. We'll be reusing this later on, so it's better to create it as a constants file. So right within the source and then app, we can create a new constants folder. Within it, we can create a new index.ts file. And within that same link in the description, I'm going to pass you all of the constants we'll be using. Here, you have no header footer URLs. So these are URLs that we can hide. And also, we have some profile nav items and inclusions, like what do we offer. So now that we have that, we can immediately start using it within the class name by saying no header footer URLs. We can click it to import it. Dot includes path name. So if it includes the path name, then run the classes dot hide. And how do we get to the path name? Well, we have to import it by using Next.js. So we can say const path name is equal to use path name, which is coming from Next navigation. And of course, we have to define what a classes.hide means. So we can say .hide display is going to be none. Now, this is not going to work right off the bat, and that is because we still have to filter it and join it to be only one string, because the class name expects a string and not an array of strings. So we can call the .filter on this and only get the ones that are Boolean true, and then we can join them with an empty space. This is how from an array, we're going to get a simple string. And of course, since we're using use path name, we have to convert our header into a client component by using the use client directive. There we go. So now we have all of our links. We can click shop. That works. And if we are on these links, such as create account, login, recover password, we can hide the navigation bar, which is exactly what we're doing here, because our create account is going to have a completely new layout, inside of which we don't need our nav bar. Now let's dive into our header nav, which is right here in the /nav, and let's modify it further. Inside of here, we can remove these comments to make it easier to see what's happening. And we can turn these links into a button that looks a bit better. So let's remove these links and React fragment and render a new button, which we can import from /button. It is a self-closing component that's going to have the L as in element equal to link. It's going to have an href of /login. It's going to have a label of login. It's going to have the appearance of primary. And on click, we want to have a callback function where we do window.location.href is equal to a string of /login. So we're simply moving to the login. That's it. You can see now we have a beautiful login button. We can also further style this button by going into it and making it also accept children. So right here, we can say children, is going to be of a type React.React node. We're going to pass it over through props, children, and we can then add it right here within the content. So here we have content, and right below this span, we can render the children. This is in case we want to pass some additional icons or labels or arrows to style our button further. What we can also do while we're here is also modify its index.module.css by styling the padding to 1024 to make it a bit slimmer, as well as increasing the border radius to 10 pixels. So if we save it, you can see now it matches our theme a bit more. We can close our buttons. That's good. We have used it right here. But now our button is complaining, and that's because we didn't set children to be optional. So we can modify this type. Always be careful about TypeScript types. They're here to save us, not ruin our day. And finally, sometimes we also want to display the cart link right below the button. So here we can say if user exists, then maybe that user has a cart link, which we can simply define like this. I believe right now we're not logged in, so we cannot see it, which is totally okay. Also, we no longer need to import the user. So there we go. And now that our header nav is almost done, we have our mobile now, but looking at this, Payload made it so good that technically it fits nicely on mobile devices. So for now, I'm just going to remove the mobile nav, and we can revisit it later on if needed. But for now, as I said, we can remove that folder as well. Now, what we can do is go into the header component index module SCSS, and this also removed that index right here at the bottom, so it's looking perfect. With that said, we have successfully modified the first section of our application, the header, but we have just modified the styles and the content, but not really the links, right? This is coming directly from header, and header is coming from, let's see where, if we go to our main index right here, it's coming from fetch header, which is coming from API fetch globals, which is a huge function. So the question is, how can we modify the content, the globals, the collections, or the data of our application? And the answer is, we can do it right within our admin interface. So let's expand this just a tiny bit and open up localhost 3000/admin. Then open up the sidebar, which I believe is right here. Go to header. And here you can add all the links you want. Let's add a new nav item. In this case, let's make it point to home. And let's add the label of home. It's going to be an internal link, and it's going to show up at the first place. We can leave the products as the second link, and it can say shop. Now, as soon as you save this and collapse right here, go back to localhost and reload, you can notice that now you're logged in, so we have this extra thing right here, but we also have home and cart, considering that we're logged in. So pretty cool stuff. You can easily modify it right here within your admin interface. Now that we've modified the header, let's focus on the footer next. To get started working on our footer component, let's find where we have this footer, which is going to be in the components, and then not header, but this time it's going to be the footer. There we go. And we have the index.tsx. Now, as before, here we can remove most of these imports, which we won't be needing, like the gutter, like the CMS link, the gutter, also the theme selector, and then also fetch globals. We'll be using all of these within some other files. We can remove these comments right here and just do a console.log with the error. We can remove everything that is within this footer tag and simply wrap everything in a React fragment, like so. And right within, we can render a new footer component self-closing. And to it, we can pass the footer equal to footer. This is it. Now, we can also remove the classes, and we can go right here within the footer and create a new footer component folder that's going to have an index.ts. inside of which we can run RAFCE, rename it to footer component, say something like footer, and we can create a new index.module.scss file, which we can import within the footer component by saying import classes from /index.module.scss. Finally, we can go back to this index and we can import footer component from /footer component. Now here, it's complaining that we cannot have footer here, and that's because I called it TS instead of TSX. This is a component instead, right? So we can do it like this. And now it's not going to complain that we imported the footer component, to which we're passing the footer, and at the bottom, we can simply see a text that says footer, which means we can start focusing on our new footer component. So let's wrap it with a semantic HTML5 footer tag, like so. Let's also give it a class name equal to no header footer URLs coming from constants. And we're going to do the same thing that we've done with our navbar, dot includes. So if it includes this specific path name, which we have to define at the top, const path name is equal to use path name coming from next navigation, which we have to import. Then we can do classes dot hide, else we can do an empty string for the class name. Right within that footer, we can render the gutter, which is just going to provide some spacing, and we can import it from /gutter. And within it, we can render a UL, an unordered list, that's going to have a class name equal to classes dot inclusions. Soon enough, we're going to implement the styling for them. Of course, as soon as we added use path name, we have to turn this into a client component by using use client. Now, let's see how does a finished footer look like. There we go. So we have these so-called inclusions. What is included with our payment? Like free shipping, money guarantee, support, payments, and then finally we have this footer on the bottom that looks very nice. And of course, our logos will be working. So let's continue creating the layout for it, and then we're going to focus on the styling later on. First, we have a UL, inside of which we can render inclusions, which we can import from constants, dot map, where we get each individual inclusion, as well as its index. And then we can immediately return, meaning just put a parenthesis here, an li. Each li has to have a key, which can be equal to something like inclusion dot title. And then within it, we can have an image, a Next.js image component, which has to be imported from next/image. We can give it a source, an src of inclusion.icon. And by the way, if you're wondering where this is coming from, look into inclusions. It's coming from our constants, where we simply give each inclusion a title, description, and an icon. Alongside an icon, we can also give it an alt tag equal to inclusion.title, as well as a width of 36, height of 36, and a class name equal to classes.icon. If we save it, you can see 4 icons right here at the bottom. Below the image, still within li, we can render an h5 that's going to say inclusion.title. And now, if you reload, you'll be able to see the text appear right here as well. We can give it a class name of classes.title. And below, we can also do a p tag that's going to render the inclusion.description. There we go. Everything is now here. Of course, once we style the inclusions div, we'll actually be able to see them nicely appear in a grid type format. So now we can go below this gutter and we can create a new div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.footer. While we're here, why don't we immediately add the classes for our footer? Since this is just the styling, once again, in the link down in the description where all the code blocks are, you'll be able to find the footer.module.scss, which you can simply copy and paste over here. It's just a couple of classes for hiding social icons, as well as creating the grid for our inclusions. So then you'll be able to see that now it's looking a bit better. Within our footer, we can also do a gutter, which once again just creates some space. Within it, we can create another div that's going to have a class name of classes.wrap. Then we can create a link that's going to point to href of just home for now. And of course, we have to import the link coming from next/link. And within the link, we can render an image tag that has a source equal to /logo-white.svg, an alt tag of logo, and a width of about, let's do 170, and a height of about 50 should be fine. If we save it, you can see the nice logo appear. Now we can go below this link and render a p tag, such as footer.copyright. And here's the thing. Now I want to teach you how to add additional things to your content, similar to what we have done with our navbar. So let's quickly comment this out, because if you leave it, it says cannot find name footer. Well, footer in this case is coming from params. So we can destructure it because we're passing it into this component. Don't forget, in our main index, we get the footer by getting it from await fetch footer, and then we pass it as a prop. So here we can destructure it and then say footer is of a type footer coming from payload types, and we can save it. But you can see that the copyright doesn't exist on footer. So how can we add an additional property, such as copyright in this case, to our footer? Well, we can navigate to our globals.ts right here within GraphQL. You can see that here we are going to see our footer with nav links, and we also want to get copyright next to those nav links. Then we also want to go to our footer.ts of payload globals, and here you can choose which fields you want to add to it. So right now we're in globals and then footer. And here you can add a new field with a name of copyright, label of copyright, like this, type of text, and required of true. There we go. And add a comma here. Finally, in payload types, which we can navigate to as well, payload types, we can search for footer. And here, on top of nav links, we can also add copyright of string. So these are three places where we have to modify something. One is payload types on the footer. Another one is globals footer right here. And the third one is globals within GraphQL, where we fetch that data. We're going to go through this process many times. But yes, I agree. Payload requires some time to getting used to. But once you get used to it, you're essentially building on top of open source directories, using GraphQL and using proper types, right? They're not reinventing the wheel. They just provide proper typing, they provide proper GraphQL fetching, and they allow you to then modify it using their own CMS. So now that we have modified those types, there's one more thing we have to do. We have to go to our terminal, stop our app from running by pressing Ctrl+C and then Y. And then I would recommend installing yarn. So you can do that by running npm install -- global yarn in case you've been using npm. If you were on yarn, then that's good already. Usually yarn works better with GraphQL queries, so I just like to use it here. And then run yarn payload generate :GraphQL schema. This is going to generate a GraphQL schema based off our modified GraphQL config. And finally, we also want to generate the types by running yarn generate types. Great, that is done as well. Now let's go back to our admin interface, which is going to be right here. Let's expand it and check it out. Without even reloading, our localhost 3000 admin panel knew that now we have a new copyright field which we can add. That's cool. So this is how you modify your globals within Payload CMS. Let's say add 2024. Let's do something like Tech Haven, all rights reserved. And we can click save. Now, if we go back, it's updating the footer. And also, if we go back to our footer, you can notice that TypeScript immediately knows that now a copyright property of type string does indeed exist on our footer. So let's rerun our application by running npm run dev. And while we're waiting for it to run, let's also add additional social icons to our footer by going to our admin panel and adding new nav items. We can add a custom URL, open a new tab, and let's do something like https://facebook.com. And then you can say label of Facebook. We can also repeat this process for 3 more sites, custom URL, open a new tab. Let's do https://instagram.com, and we can do Instagram. And finally, let's also do the third one, custom URL. Let's do youtube.com, and let's say YouTube. Great. So now we have 3 of these. Hopefully they won't have any more errors, and we can click save. There we go. That's looking good. And now our application is up and running. We do indeed see our copyright at the bottom, which is great. And the last thing to do is to loop over our social icons. So let's create a new div with a class name equal to classes.social_links. And let's loop over our nav items, which we can import from constants, .map, where we get each individual item. And before we return it, we want to just open up a regular function block. We want to extract the icon from each one of these links. For now, let's leave it as an empty string. And then we want to return. We can return a button for each one of these. That's going to contain, for now, just a piece of text saying item.link.label. Let's give this button a key equal to item.link.label. Let's give it an element of link, an href of item.link.url. Let's fix this. A new tab of true, and a class name of classes.social_link_item. And of course, we need to import the button from //button. And if we save it, you can see that it's going to break because it cannot read the property link right here. And that's because I mapped over profile nav items instead of nav items, which we're going to define right here at the top by saying const nav items is equal to footer $.nav items. So we're directly getting them from the footer coming from payload. And if it doesn't exist, we can make it an empty array. Great. So now we should be able to accept those links. That's good. Nav items, plural. If we save it, now we can see 3 logos, but they're really dark, so you can barely see them if you hover. But Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube are indeed here. Now, the last thing we have to figure out is how to attach those social media icons to those different nav links. And to do that, we're again going to dive a bit deeper into how Payload works. So we're going to move over to GraphQL, so _GraphQL. And then specifically, we're going to go to link.ts. Within here, we can define that on top of the URL, we also want to get the icon, which is going to contain its own URL. Then we also want to go to Payload Fields link.ts, and right here at the bottom, below this admin with 50, and then below 2 more curly braces, we want to add a new link with the name of icon, label of icon, type of upload, and we want to add a relation to media. So this is going to be a media file. Finally, you know the drill. If we modify the GraphQL config, we have to stop our application from running. We have to run yarn payload generate GraphQL schema, as well as yarn generate types for that schema. Finally, we can rerun our application. And while we're rerunning it, we can go to our admin panel and we can add those links over to those nav items. As soon as the application loads, we'll be able to upload the media files. There we go. I reloaded the page, and now you can see that you can upload new media or choose from existing. I'm going to go upload new media, select file, and now you want to find the folder we're currently working on. Because remember, in the public folder, and then in admin UI, I gave you access to all of the things that you might need, such as footer and then icons. So first we're uploading for, I believe it is Facebook. You can say Facebook and save. Then we're going to go to the second one, Instagram, upload new media, Instagram as well. And the third one is going to be, in this case, I think I called it YouTube, but we have Twitter icon. So I'm going to do Twitter, save, and I'm going to rename it to Twitter, or now it's X, and Twitter right here. Feel free to do whatever you want. Twitter or X is fine. And let's click save. So now this is going to give us access to those icons within the code. So let's go back to this index. And within the button, instead of rendering the label, we can render a new self-closing Next.js image tag that's going to have the icon right within. But to get to that icon, we can say item !link !icon as media, which is coming from payload types. And then here we can say source is equal to icon !URL. Let's give it an alt tag of something like item.link.label. There we go. Let's also give it a width of about 24, a height of 24, and a class name of classes.social icon. Now, if I save it, all 3 icons appear and they redirect to proper pages in a new tab. The footer is now looking great, as well as the navbar. It's plain and simple, but now the main content is what truly makes this app shine. The products that we see on there in this amazing hero section. But before we start working on the hero section and the categories, there's one more page that is beautiful and so important, which is the create account page and login page. Doesn't look like something on mobile, but check out the desktop view. This is great, right? It really screams tech products. So let's go ahead and create login, create account, and also forget password all at once. I'm going to collapse this, close all of the currently open files, and hopefully we're getting closer to understanding how Payload works behind the scenes. The learning curve is there, but as soon as you understand how to use it, it becomes such a powerful tool to create not only e-commerce stores, but also all kinds of apps that require a CMS. So let's get started by logging out if you haven't already, and then re-navigating to the login page. This is the current login, and this is what we want our login to look like. Quite different, right? So what we can do is open up the login page right here. That's going to be login /page.tsx right here. Within here, we want to remove everything that we have within the gutters, and we want to turn it into a section. That section is going to have a class name equal to classes.login. And within it, we can have a div that's going to have a class name of classes.heroIMG for our main primary image. And then a link that's going to have an href to /. And we, of course, have to import link coming from next link. And within it, we can render a Next.js image tag imported from next / image that's going to render the source of / logo-black.svg with an alt tag of logo, a width of 250, a height of 23, and a class name equal to classes.logo. If we save this, you can see now we only have the logo, and we can go below this link and below the div to create the form. So we can say div with a class name equal to classes.formWrapper, and within it, another div that's going to have the class name equal to classes.formContainer. And don't worry, we're going to add the classes soon. Within it, we can add something known as render params. And this is coming directly from Payload. To it, we can pass a class name of classes.params. Below it, we can render a div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.formTitle. And right within, we can render an h3 that's going to say welcome. There we go. And right below it, we can render an image that's going to have a source of /assets /icons /hand.png with an alt tag of hand, a width of 30, and a height of 30 as well. So that's just a waving hand. Below this div, we can also do a p tag that's going to say please log in here. And right below, we can render the login form coming from Payload. There we go. Now, of course, it's our turn to also style it a bit. So in the description down below, you can find the index.module.scss, the modified one at least, and paste it, which is going to completely change the look and the feel. We also want to slightly modify the inputs by heading into the input index.module.scss. And here we want to change the border radius to about 10 pixels. That's going to make them a bit rounded. We want to change the height to about 52 pixels to increase it. We want to change the padding to about 16 pixels, as well as the font size to 16 pixels. If you save it, you can see it looks good. And we also want to give it a border of 1px solid var --color -gray 500. Finally, we can go right here below in the label and add the font size of about 12 pixels. There we go. That's going to decrease the font size. Now, we also want to modify those links a bit. Right now, they don't look so good. So let's go to the login form. So index.tsx of the login form. Let's scroll down to where we have those two links. There we go. And let's add a class name of classes.links, as well as remove this text. This is where customers will log in. We don't necessarily need that here. And this link as well. The entire p tag for that matter. There we go. That's a bit cleaner. Also, in this redirect right here, instead of pushing to account, we want to push to / and set the window.location.href to / as well. Since we added this class name of links, we now have to go into this module and modify it. On submit, we can give it a width of 100%. We can add this new .links of display is flex, This is going to make them appear in a row. Align items off center, justify content of space between, and a width of 100%. There we go. That's better already. Let's also modify the form itself by changing the width to 100%. We don't need this include mid break then, and we can remove the width here. We can do a gap of about 24 pixels and a margin top of about 30 pixels to create some space. There we go. That's better already. And with that, we have successfully went through a couple of files and modified our login page, which is now looking much better than the default create an account or recover your password pages. So let's quickly navigate to create an account. And oh my God, would you look at that? Let's go ahead and modify that one next. We can start with going to create account and then the index of that create account page and modifying the styles immediately by copying them from the description down below and then pasting the new ones. And then we can go to its page.tsx within create account to start modifying it, because right now it's not looking that good. So we can do almost the same exact thing as we have done with the login. So let's quickly go to login/page.tsx and let's copy everything that is within the return statement and paste it right here within this return. Of course, we'll have to import the link from next link, image from next image, as well as exchange this to create account form. If we save it, you can see that it's going to be working again, but of course there's a couple of changes we have to make. Change this to classes.createAccount. The logo can remain the same. The form wrapper and everything else is good. Instead of welcome, we can say create account. Instead of please log in here, we can say please enter details. And that's more or less it. We have a nice looking form. There's some inconsistencies with the design here. We're missing some spacing and more. So we can do a similar thing that we've done before. We can go now into the create form or the create account form, which is right here. We can scroll down and then within this else, where we push to this different account, we simply want to push to the /. There we go. And add the window.location.href to / as well. I remember that I had to add this to fully make it work. In the form data, we can also add an additional field. And that form data is, I believe, right here. So we can add a name as well, which is going to be of a type string. Then we can add an input for that name right here below the first input by duplicating it, changing it to name. Then we can change it to full name, required, register, errors.name, and type of text. So this now added the full name property right here. Finally, instead of create account, here we can say something like sign up. And I believe we have a great looking form. Oh yeah, we have to do that styling. So we can go to the styles of the create account form. We can remove this width and mid break and instead make width of 100%. Add a margin top of about 30 pixels as before. Change the gap to 24 pixels. And in the submit, instead of changing the margin top, we can set the width to 100%. There we go. That's more like it. So now we have our great Tech Haven create account as well as login pages done. And you can notice how also the images change from time to time. The last page we have to focus on is the recover your password page. That looks like this. And I think you can already guess it, but the procedure is going to be quite similar. We can close all of the currently open pages. As before, we're going to modify the form first by going to recover password form and then recover password module SCSS. Down below, you can find the recover password form.module.scss and simply override it. While we're here, let's also go to the recover password form index tsx as well, scroll to the return, and if not success, we can do a p tag right here within the React fragment, something like enter your registered email address. We'll send you a code to reset your password. There we go. Password with 1A. We don't need an H1 here. Rather, we just need a form. So we can remove this form wrapper as well as this p tag all together and just have the form. We also have to remove the closing div and indent it properly. The form is going to have a class name of classes.form, and within it, we have a message, we have an input, and we have a submit button. So now, as you can see, this is looking even worse than before, but that's because we didn't yet modify the real recover password page. So let's navigate to recover password under pages, and let's go to the index module SCSS first and override it. There we go. Now you can see the background. And then we can go to recover password page, the real one, and you know the drill. It's going to look quite similar to login and register. So let's quickly go to login page, and let's copy everything from the return statement right here and paste it in this return statement. Of course, we have to import the link as well as the image. In this case, we won't have render params. And instead of login form, here we'll have recover password form. If we save it, it's looking a bit better. But instead of classes.login, we want to give it a classes.recover password, which is going to bring back that beautiful image. We have our hero image. Then we have our logo as well. We can go to the form wrapper. And within the form container, I was wrong. We will add the render params as well. And let me tell you why. If you add it here and give it a class name equal to classes.params and save it, because this is needed to properly route through URL params. Because if you open up this component, you can see that they had some problems. So to fix this, they wrap the component in a suspense component right here, and then they render params component. Of course, instead of welcome, right here, we can say something like h3 of forgot password. We don't need this p tag right here. And we also need to add a link to go back in case we maybe remembered our password. So what we can do is we can put this h3 right here below, as well as the div that's wrapping it. So that's the form title right here. That's going to make it look like this. We don't need to wave here. So we can remove this image. That's a hand. But below the render params, we can add a link that's going to have an href of /login and a class name equal to classes.backlink. It's going to simply render an image that's going to have a source equal to /assets /icons /arrow-left.svg. Alt tag is left arrow, width is 24, and height is 24 as well. So now we have this back arrow and an additional letter L that I added here, which I can remove. And right below, we can also simply do a p tag that says back. There we go. This is looking good to me. And now we have completely customized login, create account, and recover your password pages. Of course, let's go ahead and test it out. I'll try to simply log in with the account that I've created before as an admin. And you can see that worked out and we're logged in. This is great. And finally, now we can focus on the moment we've been waiting for, which is modifying the homepage to make it go from this to this. Yep, I know you're excited, so let's go ahead and build it out together. We can get started by doing the hero section. So let's open up the underscore heroes. That's a folder that's right here. There we go. So underscore heroes, and we have multiple heroes here. We have high impact, low impact, medium, product, and more. Inside of there, let's add a new folder called custom hero. Within it, we can create a new index.tsx, and we can start by copying what we have in the high impact hero. So let's go ahead and copy it and modify this from high impact hero to custom hero. Now we have an extra hero, and we can go to our hero index.tsx component. So now under underscore components right here, we want to add our hero to the heroes array. So we have high impact, medium, and low impact. And at the bottom, we want to add a custom hero, which is equal to custom hero coming from heroes custom hero. There we go. Let's go to our existing site, and we can see that we have an issue, and that is that we're importing the index module CSS, but we don't have it. So let's create a new index.module.scss within custom hero as well. And you know the drill. In the description down below, in that same link, you'll be able to find the custom hero module SCSS. You can copy it and paste it right here. With that said, our app is now functional again, which means that we can start making use of it. For now, the only thing we can do is just modify it slightly so we can see when this hero is actually going to appear. So I'm going to comment out everything within the gutters and then say h1, say this is our custom hero, just so I can show you how we can get to it. Because right now we can still see the other one. To do that, we also have to go to payload fields. So let's go to fields, hero.ts, which is right here within the fields within the payload. And here at the bottom, below low impact, we want to also add a new label for the custom hero, as well as the value of custom hero. There we go. We also want to change the condition. So here below, we have admin, condition, show high impact and medium impact, but now we want to also add a custom hero here as well. That's going to look something like this. Next, we have to go to our page where that hero is going to be showing, and that's going to be slug page.tsx, written like this. So pages, slug, and here we have to show our hero. That's going to be happening right here below in the return statement. So we have to figure out if we are currently on the home page by saying slug is triple equal to home. If that is the case, then we want to render a gutter, and within the gutter, we want to render the hero to which we're going to spread all the hero properties. Else, we want to render another React fragment within which we want to have what we had before, hero with blocks. There we go. So now we can display our own, and of course we have to import gutter from components gutter. Now, another thing we can do here within this try and catch is we're fetching the document which we want to show, but we also want to fetch the categories which we will later on use. So below the page, we can say let categories is of a type category, which we can get from payload types, but array of categories, and it's going to be set to null by default. So if you're wondering why we're doing this, well, we have to fetch the categories right here because we're showing them here. We have them in a couple of other places as well. So we're making our app a bit more advanced than the starter. To fetch the categories, we can do similar to what we're doing with the page here. Categories is equal to await fetch docs of a type category, and we simply call it by passing categories, plural, right here as a string. We also want to import some additional classes right here. So at the top, we can say import classes from .index.module.scss, and therefore we have to create a new index.module.scss. This one won't have a lot of styles. We simply want to import _CSS /queries SCSS to get the queries. And then we want to do a .home class that has a display of flex dash direction of column, gap of 100 pixels, margin top of 100 pixels as well. Make sure to add a semicolon right here at the end. And we can also include a mid-break media query with a gap of 60 pixels. There we go. So now we're almost done with seeing our new hero, but in our terminal, we want to rerun the GraphQL commands one more time. So instead of reloading our terminal, I'm going to open one side by side. And then here, I'm going to run yarn payload generate GraphQL schema, as well as yarn generate types. Now, if you reload the page, nothing will happen, but let's go ahead and log in. We want to go to the admin dashboard, pages, and then home. Now, if you expand it, you can see that we have the title of this page, and you can also see that we can choose from different hero sections. So instead of high impact, let's choose our custom hero, and let's click publish changes. It says that this following field has an invalid hero type. That might be because we forgot to modify the types. So if I go to payload-types, and then we go all the way to where the low impact is, we can see that it also has a custom hero. So no, we didn't forget to add it. So one thing we could try doing is just reloading our terminal once again. So let's press Ctrl C and then Y, and then simply run npm run dev one more time. This should ensure that all of the changes are indeed recognized by GraphQL, as well as Payload's admin interface. Let's wait until the app is up and running again. Then let's go to our admin panel, reload the page, and let's change it to custom hero and press publish. As you can see, the update was successful. So now we can go back to our home page and reload. And would you look at that, this is our custom hero. So we just added a new hero that you can simply pick and choose from different heroes right here. What we can also do is modify the content. So here, we can choose a custom hero, and then you can choose whatever you want to do with it. So let's try to replicate what we have on the final site. We have unleash innovation in every byte, explore a world of cutting-edge tech. So let's just copy this and paste it right here. There we go. This is looking good to me. And later on, we can focus on the world of cutting-edge tech. For now, the most important thing is that we can see later on what we have under the rich text right here, and you're open to completely modifying it and changing the size and more. Let's also add the links. So we can go to our link 01, make it an internal link pointing to products and shop now, and we can also upload a new media file. So let's go to media, select a file, and we're going to go to admin UI hero and choose the hero one right here. We can say hero and save. There we go. We can then remove this second link as well as the media. And I just noticed that this icon for the link was not supposed to be here. This link will not have an icon, but here we have to upload the media for the hero section. So let's go here and then upload hero one by saying hero. And let's click publish changes. Now we can preview it as well right here within admin, which is going to open it up on our local host. But of course, we cannot see anything because if we go to our code in our custom hero, it just simply does nothing. So let's go ahead and customize this entire page. I'm going to remove this H1 and bring back everything we had with our previous high impact hero. And you can immediately see the changes. Unleash innovation, shop now, and then our hero section. Let's make this a mobile view and let's style it like this. We're going to start not with a gutter, but with a section with a class name of hero. Within it, we're going to have a div with a class name of hero wrapper. And we can also give it some additional styles. Specifically, we want to modify the background image. But for that, we have to get access to this image right here to make it a background. So let's say const media URL is equal to, and now we have to figure out how to get to this media. We only want to get to it if media exists, so media and if type of media is not equal to a string, then we want to access the media that's hosted for us by Payload. So we can get into a template string that's going to have the process.env dot next underscore public underscore server underscore URL forward slash media forward slash media dot file name. There we go. So now we have a link to our media URL. And right here on this div, we can give it a style equal to an object where background image is set to a template string of URL and then media URL like this. Of course, that's supposed to be dynamic. There we go. So now we can style it, and you can see that now it appeared as a background image, which means that no longer do we need this specific media here. So we can remove this entire div below. There we go. That's more like it, but still far away from this beautiful thing. So let's go back. Let's create a new div right here below or within this div that's going to have a class name equal to, that's going to be classes.hero text box. Within it, we want to put the rich text, which is coming directly from our hero. And then within it, we also want to put this array right here. That's more like it. Everything we're getting back from the admin panel. We can see that right here. Unleash innovation in every byte. But we have something else as well, right? Explore a world of cutting-edge tech. So if we add that here right now below, we can, for example, make this H2 or something like that. And now we can publish the changes again, go back and reload, and you can see the difference, right? You can automatically style this website, and it looks so much better on larger screens. But let's compare it with the finished site. Something doesn't feel right. Here, our text is getting out. Unleash innovation in every byte. If you notice, on every size, this text is in 2 lines, right? So the simplest fix would be to simply here say unleash innovation in every byte. That way, that's going to appear below. So let's publish changes and reload the page. And there we go. This is now exactly as it is on the finished site. So with that said, our hero is now done. And if you click shop now, it's going to point to products. So our hero is looking great. There is one improvement we can still do for mobile devices. Notice these gutters on left and right side. And here on mobile, it goes full screen. It just makes it look a bit better. So what we can do is figure out where those gutters are coming from. So let's see where our hero is getting called. I'm guessing it's going to be in the components hero. Well, not here, but rather in the index of the pages. So pages slug, and here we have the gutter, and then we have the hero. What we can do in this case is simply set this up as a section, and then below later on for all the other content, we're going to have the gutter. So here later on, we're going to put things like categories. We're going to also put product collections and promotions and so much more. For now, the hero is going to be without gutters. And that's going to improve this look of the hero. There we go. So now we're already getting so much closer to the finished site. And once again, in case you want to modify anything, you just go here and modify it directly within the interface. The next thing we can focus on is of course going to be the category section. It's a beautiful section that's essentially a next step, right? You go here, you see this beautiful hero, but maybe you don't want to buy a phone. Maybe you want to buy some watches, TV and home, iPads, whatever you want. It is right here, and we can implement it by doing this shop by category section. So let's collapse it. Let's close all of the currently open files by holding Control and then pressing W. And let's start implementing the categories. Now, to start working on our categories, first of all, we want to ensure that they have images. And by now, by default, they don't have them. So we need to modify it within payload types. So let's go to payload-types. And then here, same thing how we have modified this custom hero, we also want to go to category this time, which is right here, export interface category. And then on top of the ID and the title, which is not going to be optional, by the way, we also want to give it a media property of a type string or media or null. This also means that we'll have to go to collections/categories right here. And then here, on top of the title of type text, we want to make it required to true. And we also want to give it this media property by saying name is equal to media, as well as a type is equal to upload. And finally, relationship or relation to is going to be set to media. You know the drill. Once you change this, you have to rerun yarn payload generate GraphQL schema, and you also have to do yarn generate types. Next, we have to reload our app. So let's press Ctrl C and then Y, clear it, and then run npm run dev. Now, let's ensure that we're fetching all of the categories that we later on create. We can do that by going to _API/fetch doc, or in this case, fetch docs.ts right here. We're fetching the pages, the products, but we also want to fetch categories. So here we can say categories, where we can specify the query to be set to categories, like this. And then we also want to do a key of categories. That's going to be a capitalized C right here. Also, these categories are coming from GraphQL categories on top. Now we want to modify our GraphQL by going to _GraphQL, and then by going to categories right here. For now, we simply have categories, but we want to improve on that a bit further by renaming it to product_categories. We want to get the title, ID, breadcrumbs, but we also want to export just typical categories like this. That's going to be a template string where we want to query categories by saying categories with a limit of 300. We want to get the docs, the documents for each one of these categories with an ID, title, media, and media is going to have an alt tag, a width, a height, and a URL. Now we can retrieve those GraphQL schemas from blocks. So we can go to _GraphQL blocks. And we want to scroll down to line 45, and we want to change this over from categories to product_categories coming from /categories. Similarly, we want to do the same thing right here on line 66, product categories. And finally, when fetching the products, we also want to display some categories. So we want to go to products GraphQL, and we want to scroll down to here, line 22, and modify this over to say product categories. And of course, we have to import it, and we're no longer using the previous categories. So we can simply remove it right here at the top. And I do think we'll have to reload our terminal one more time, or rather regenerate the GraphQL schema because we have just changed it. So just rerun both of the commands as before, and the other one as well. Now, remember that we had that homepage before. So that's going to be on the slug and then page, under pages. Here, I said we're going to render the categories. So let's do exactly that. We're going to render a getter that's going to have a class name equal to home, or rather classes.home. And then right here, we have to render the categories, but we are yet to create that category component. So we can go to components. That is right here, components, and we can create a new categories component. So _components, new folder, categories, and within it, a new index.tsx. For now, we can just run RAFCE and make it say categories. So now this is going to allow us to import it right here from our page by saying categories. Make sure that you get one from the components right here. And to it, we can pass categories is equal to categories. we already have access to those categories because we pulled it right here before. So there we go. And of course, now it's our turn to dive into the categories. Of course, we need to reload our app because we have modified the GraphQL config. And then once it loads, we'll be able to start creating the structure for our categories section. There we go. If you reload our app, you can see that now we're displaying the categories, which means that we can start coding them out. So let's create a new section. And this section has to have its own class name. So let's go ahead and create a new index.module.scss. And you know the drill, we can simply copy and paste the styles right here for categories. Then we can give this section a class name. So that's going to be class name is equal to, we have to import classes coming from /index.module.scss, and then you can refer classes.container. Right within that section, we want to have another div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.title wrapper. And right within it, we want to have an h3 element that's going to say shop by categories, and we can save it. Already, we're getting there. Right below, we also want to display a link coming from next link that's going to have an href pointing to /products, and it's going to say show all. There we go, that's better. Now below, the most important thing comes, and that is we want to create a new div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.list. And there we want to map over all of our categories, which for now are coming through props. So we can say get categories from props, which is of a type categories, category array coming from payload types. So within this div, we can simply go categories dot map, where we get each individual category, and for each one, we immediately want to return a category card. Category card. This is a new component that we're going to create. So let's immediately do that by creating a new folder called category card, and within it, create a new index.tsx file where you can run rafce and then modify it to say category card. And finally, also give it a new index.module.scss. And there, paste what you can find in the category.module.scss below this video. We can also just import it right here at the top by saying import classes from /index.module.scss. So now we can go back and we can import this category card from /category card. And we can also pass to it a key equal to category.id, as well as a category itself equal to category. So now we can go into the category card, and you can see we already see 3 categories. But now what we can do is we can modify their look and feel to look a bit closer to this. To do that, we're going to return only one thing, which is going to be a link. A link, of course, coming from next link, which is going to have an href pointing to /products. It's also going to have a class name equal to classes.card. And within that link, we can render a p tag that's going to have a class name equal to classes.title. And it's going to render the category.title. Of course, the category has to be imported from props. So we can say category is going to be of a type category card props, which we can define right here at the top by saying type category card props is equal to category of a type category coming from payload types. And of course, that's a lowercase c. Once you fix it, you should be able to see that we have some rectangles, but we are yet to modify these to be actual images. So as before, we have to get the image URL by saying const media is equal to category.media as media, that's just for TypeScript, And now we can provide an additional style property to this link that's going to be background image is equal to a template string of URL media.url. Now, if we save this, everything is going to break. And if you remember, that's because our previous categories didn't really have media files. But now we want to upload new ones that have them. So before we can see images, we have to modify our admin interface. So to do that, we can go back to our admin interface. We can make it a bit larger. We can go to categories on the left side. We want to remove all 3 existing categories. And then we want to create a new category. You can upload a new media, select a file, and this time go to categories and choose whichever one you want. In this case, let's do something like laptops. So here we can say laptops, and we can call it laptops or MacBooks, whatever you prefer. And you can click Save. This is going to create a new category. Let's try to add a couple more. For example, we can add a new category by going back to categories and creating a new one. That's going to be a category of, let's first upload a media file. Let's do something like phones. We can say phones here. And we can also say phones right here as the title of the category. And let's also do one more by going back to categories, creating a new one. We can upload a new media file and do something like, let's do watches. And finally, a title of watches. There we go. And click Save right here. So all 3 categories are saved. There we go. Now let's collapse this. And let's go back to our current website and reload. As you can see, the categories have immediately changed to watches, phones, and laptops. And if we bring back this style, you can notice that now they have their images because the images we just uploaded correspond to specific categories. Now, if you click on it, it's just going to point you to general all products, not for products of that specific category. So this is an extra functionality which we'll have to implement. We're going to create a custom hook to manage our filters. We're going to need it later on for managing the products as well. So let's navigate all the way to providers, which is right here. And we want to create a new provider called filter, which is going to be within a folder called filter. And it's going to have an index.tsx extension. Within here, we essentially want to create a new context. So of course, it's going to be a use client component because we'll be using a lot of states. Essentially, we want to keep track of all of the currently selected category filters and sorting options. So we can say export const initial filter data is equal to an object where the category filters is set to an empty array. The set category filters, which is going to be, of course, the setter function, is going to be set to an empty function. Sort is an empty string, and set sort is once again going to be an empty function, which returns a string. And category filters returns an array, so we can modify it right here. Next, we have to define the filter context by saying const filter context is equal to create context of initial filter data. Then we want to export const a filter provider that accepts children because it's a context, of course. Children is of a type React.React node, so we can define that right here. Or we can simply import React node from React at the top by saying import React node, which is coming from React. Or I believe we can just do React.React node. That should work as well. Finally, we want to open up a new function block, and then we want to return the filter context. So we can say filter context dot provider like this. We want to wrap the children with this to make it a higher order component. And we want to define the value that's going to be passed within it. And those values are going to be use state fields. So we can say use state snippet, category filters, set category filters, which is at the start going to be equal to an empty array, as well as sort options. So we can say const sort, set sort at the start equal to minus created at. This simply means that it's going to show the newest products first. We of course have to import create context from React. We want to import use state from React as well. And then at the end, we want to pass all of those values here. So category filters, set category filters, sort, and set sort. It looks like we have to define all of the types properly. And you can see some squiggly lines here. These are just for TypeScript, so no worries about that yet. Finally, we can define a custom hook to consume this context. Export const use filter is equal to a callback function that calls the use context hook, like this, used context, and we want to pass the filter context to it. Of course, we also have to import use context from React. So now we have created this global provider, and of course, we have to use it somewhere. We have to wrap our application with it. And that's going to be within the underscore providers. Right here, we have all of the providers we might ever need. So we can also add the filter provider right here if we import it from /filter. And we can put the children right here within it. Great. So what did this allow us to do right now? Well, if we go back to the link right here, we can consume and then modify those filters on a global level. So to use it, we can use the hook we created, const something is equal to use filter, which is coming from providers filters. From it, for now, we simply want to get set category filters. And then we can add an onClick property to this link and say something like callback function set category filters to be equal to an array where we pass in the category.id. And it looks like if we don't manage those TypeScript types, it's going to complain constantly. So let's go back to our filters, which is right here, and let's properly define those types. First of all, at the top, we can define an interface of iContextType. Say that the category filters are of a type string array. Set category filters, which is a setter function, is usually defined like this: React.dispatch of a type set state action, and then of a type string array, like so. Then we have a sort of a type string, and then we have set sort, which is another state action or set state dispatch action from React. Now that we have this, we can define the create context. It's of a type iContextType right here. And I believe that we're good now. So if we go back, you can see it no longer complains because it knows it's accepting this string. Finally, we're using states and hooks right here, which means that we have to turn this into a use client component. So let's say use client. And if we reload, now if we click on watches, not only is it going to go to all products, but it also saved the state that we clicked on one specific category ID. So once we do the all products pages, we'll be able to consume this context and read which category did we click to only display those products and not all products. So that's going to come soon as well. Now you can notice that here we have underlines, and on the finished websites we don't. So let's modify that further. And also there's some extra spacing happening right here. So let's modify this further. Here, this looks good to me, but let's see where our category card is getting called. And that's going to be within our index right here. We're mapping over the categories, and each category card is put within this div with a class name of classes.list. So this part seems okay as well, but we have a warning here or an error saying index.modules instead of module. So let's fix this to module and let's modify the file name here so that the styles are actually getting applied. And immediately we get this beautiful layout where everything is looking good. Once we click it, leads to all products, but soon enough, it will lead to a specific category product. Now, after the categories on our deployed website, we also have collections where you can show some of the products from specific collections and even have a pagination right here. For now, we're going to skip this and just move straight to the deal of the month. And that's because I'm so eager to start focusing on the products, or even more specifically, the product details page. So I want us to do that as soon as possible to have a fully functional e-commerce store. So we can go back to the homepage, scroll down, and focus on the deal of the month right here below the categories. To implement this promotion category, we can close all of the currently open files and go to that same slug page. This is our primary space where we can show all of the sections on the homepage. Below the categories, we can do a new component, and its name is going to be promotion. Of course, we don't have it yet, so let's go ahead and create a new promotion component by going to our underscore components in the source and creating a new folder called promotion. We can also give it an index.tsx. That's for now going to just do a regular export saying promotion. And we can also connect it with an index.module.scss file, inside of which you can paste all of the styles. Now let's go back to our slug page and let's import promotion from components promotion by pressing Ctrl and then space and then clicking it. And we don't have to pass anything to it. Immediately below the categories, we can see promotion. So now let's focus on implementing our promotion. We can get started by importing classes from /index.module.scss. Then we can wrap everything with a section tag and give it a class name equal to classes.promotion. Right within this section, we can create another div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.textbox. And within it, we can have an h3 that's going to have another class name equal to classes.title, and it's going to say deals of the month. There we go. We can see it immediately. Let's also do a p tag, and from the deployed site, which is going to be connected to the GitHub repo, I believe, you can take this p tag, or you can just write something on your own. Something like, get ready for a shopping experience like never before with our deals of the month. That's going to be enough. Below that, we can also show when are these deals expiring. So let's go ahead and add a UL that's going to have a class name equal to classes.stats. And right here, we want to show some kind of an li that's going to have a class name equal to classes.statbox. It's going to have an h4 in here, and it can say something like 5 days. Then it can also have right below a label. So here we can say days. Of course, it's not going to be only one. We have to have days, minutes, hours, and seconds as well. So we can turn this into a new component. Let's grab this li, and right here at the bottom, create a new const stat box to make it reusable. It's going to accept a label and a value as parameters. Of course, we need to define the types, where a label is of a type string and value is of a type number. And then we can immediately return what we copied, an li with days, but we're going to modify it to render the value under the h4 and to render the label under the p tag. That way we can make it dynamic. So now within this UL, instead of rendering this li, we can render a self-closing stat box component that's going to have a label of days as well as a value of, and now we need to define some kind of a time frame. So how are we going to define what time is and when does the deal expire? Well, for that, let's first create a new use state. which we can just call useStateSnippet, time, and then setTime right here. And the time is going to actually be an object that has days, hours, minutes, and seconds all initially set to 0. And we can also import useState from React. And don't forget, we of course have to make this a useClient component, considering that we have used state. So now we can pass the value of time.days. And now we can duplicate this 1, 2, 3 more times, say something like hours, the next one is minutes, and the last one is seconds. And we can modify it like so, hours, minutes, and seconds. There we go. Of course, everything is just 0 now, but now we have to figure out how to make it count down to a specific time. And in my opinion, this is the perfect use case for ChatGPT. We can say something like, write a use effect hook that updates a timer every second until a specific target date. And I believe this is enough information, but maybe we can make the target date be equal to current date plus 7 days. So it's always going to be about 7 days. And we can save it. And there we go. We got a response, but let's modify it so it doesn't return the value. Rather, it sets set time to an object where we have days, hours, minutes, and seconds to the modified time. So hopefully this is going to be clear enough. There we go. Now it uses time and set time, the target date, and it gets values for days, hours, minutes, and seconds, and then sets the time. So let's go ahead and copy this use effect, as well as the target date. Finally, we can paste it right here. And make sure to import use effect. And then let's look into the target date. Here it's complaining about the way that it is being done using the target date right here. So I guess what we could do is turn the target date into a number and do the same thing with current time. I believe this won't cause any issues, but rather it will help us with our linting. So now let's go back to our website, scroll down, and you can indeed see 6 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 44 seconds. In case you want to define a specific date, you don't have to make it dynamic from the current date. You can just use a new date and then pass some specific date in the future. For example, 3 days from now is fine as well, and then it's automatically going to get updated as soon as you reload the page. Great. So with that said, we have added this new promotion, and now our homepage is looking better than ever. We have a phenomenal hero section, we have the categories, deals of the month, and then finally the hero with some additional features that our store supports. So what do you say that we move over to the only place that we can go to right now from multiple places in our homepage, such as if we press shop or if we press categories, all of these buttons lead us to the products page. That's the /products route. So let's turn it from this to this. That's a big difference, right? We have different filters here. We can even implement pagination later on. A lot of exciting stuff is happening. So let's collapse this and let's modernize this page. We can do that by navigating over to our products and then creating a new page.tsx right within it. One has to be within the slug, and then one has to be within just products, where we can create RAFCE and we can call it products. There we go. And now you can see just a page where it says products. We're going to do this entire page from scratch so I can show you how we can fetch different products right here. Let's start with the layout. So first, we can wrap everything in a div. And of course, that div has to have a class name. So we can create a new index.module.scss file right here. This one is going to be pretty simple. We're just going to import ../../. underscore CSS / common dot SCSS, or I don't think we need to add the extension. We can leave it like this. We can say dot container is width of 100%, and later on we'll style the products too. For now, the container is fine. So if we go here, we can give it a class name is equal to, we of course have to import classes from /index.module.scss, and that's going to be classes.container. Right within this div, we can display a getter, which we need to import from components getter. It's going to have a class name equal to classes.products. We're going to add that soon. Now, right within the getters, later on, we're going to have our own filters component. So what do you say that we immediately create a new folder for filters within the products called filters? We can also give it an index.tsx file where we can run rafce and just say filters. And we can also create its corresponding index.module.scss, which you can simply paste here from the description down below. So now we can import those filters coming from /filters. And below filters, we'll also be using something built into Payload, which is blocks. It's coming from components blocks, and it allows us to pass which kind of layout do we want to enable. So there we can pass blocks is equal to, and then layout. We don't have it yet, but we will have it soon. And also a property called disable top padding is set to true, as we won't need it right here. So now let's figure out how we can get to this layout. Well, first at the top, we can define let page of a type, page coming from payload types, or null is equal to null by default. We're going to have a similar situation for fetching the categories because we need them for the filters. So we can say let categories is equal to, or rather of a type, category array coming from payload types, or null is equal to null. Then we can open up a new try and catch block where in the catch, we can simply console.log the error, and in the try, we can redefine that page by setting it equal to await, which means that we have to make this page async, and we want to await something known as fetch doc, coming from API fetch doc. Make sure it's doc singular, not plural. We want to fetch a doc of a type page that looks like this, and we can call it and pass which specific page do we want to fetch. So we can say fetch collection of pages where slug is products, okay? So we want to fetch a page where we have products. And we can define that it is a draft mode by saying is draft mode. Essentially, drafts allow you to build on top of versions functionality to make changes to your collection, documents, and globals, but publish only when you're ready. It allows you to check out how something is currently working. So what we can do is we can also define those drafts by enabling the draft mode. We can do that by saying const is enabled, which we can rename to is draft mode, is equal to draft mode, which is coming from next headers. There we go. And now we can simply define is draft mode. While we're here, we can also fetch the categories by saying categories is equal to await fetch docs, in this case plural, so we have to import it again, which is going to be of a type category, to which we pass a string of categories, and that's it. It's going to fetch it. So now, how do we get this layout? Well, we can destructure it from the page. So that's going to be page.layout. If we now save this, our app should be working again, and now we can see filters, which is great, that's here, and then we can see all products. This is coming directly from blocks because right now those blocks are tied to our products layout. We're going to modify that later on. Finally, we can add an HR component. No, it's not human resources. I'm guessing it's just a horizontal rule. So we can add that, import it from HR, and it adds this nice line to separate everything. So now the question is, how can we further style this products page? Right now, we have just redefined it in a way. So how can we further style it? Well, first, let's not forget to add the class name for our products that is right here. So that's going to be dot products. It's going to be in a grid layout. So here we can define a display of grid. It's going to have a grid dash template dash columns, 1FR right here, and then 75%. And we can leave a gap of about 60 pixels. There we go. That's now making some space for the filters. Let's also include a large break where the grid template columns is going to be set to 100% and a gap of about 48 pixels. So now on mobile devices, still we'll be able to see everything, but as we expand, we can see the filters. Now let's talk about the filters for a bit. So if we go to our underscore providers and then the index right here, we can see that we're wrapping everything with the filter provider. But there's one more place where we have to also refer the filters, and that's going to be within the collection archive. So there's a special component called collection archive. It's a large component, and it has everything to do with sorting and filtering. You can see pagination as well. So right where this component starts, which is right here at line 38, we can say const category filters as well as sort is equal to use filter, which we need to import. Then if we go into the results, set results right here, we're passing page and all the other stuff. Then if we go a bit down, all the way to line 97, where we're modifying the search query, we want to actually make the filters work. So we're going to rename cats from props, meaning categories from props, into category filters. And category filters.length, as well as category filters, and category filters. It's going to be of a type string right here. So we can say cat is a string, and we return a cat, just like so. Of course, we have to properly wrap it. And where we close this use effect, we also need to add one more thing, which are the category filter instead of cats from props. There we go. So now we're going to actually filter things once we apply those filters. But it's complaining a bit right here in the collection archive about the sort property that we used because we have previously defined sort on line 48. So let's look into it. It indeed is right here. We're getting it from props. So we can remove both the sort as well as the categories right here, because now we get them from our filters. We're again back at the working state, which is great, and now we can start focusing on our filters component. First things first, I'm going to close all the files, and I'm going to open up the index.tsx of the filters. Here, we can immediately import classes from /index.module.scss, and we can wrap everything in a div. That div is going to have a class name equal to classes.filters. Within it, we're going to have another div. And within that div, we're going to have an h6 that's going to have a class name equal to classes.title. And it's going to say something like product categories. If we save this, you should be able to see that it's going to appear right here. Then we need to map over the categories and display them like this. Of course, on larger devices, they nicely appear like this. So let's do that right now by going right here. Below the h6, we can create a div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.categories, within which we can loop over those categories. And the way we can get them is by using the use filter component we have created before. So right at the top, we can say const. We can destructure the category filters, the sort, the set category filters, and the set sort, which is equal to use filter, which of course we have to import from use filter. And then of course we'll need a function to modify that filter, const handle categories, which is going to be just a regular function that accepts the category ID on which we clicked, which is of a type string, and later on we can implement its logic. For now, within this div, let's map over our categories by running the categories.map, where we get each individual category, and we don't return an instant return, rather we open up a function block, and then here we have to figure out if the selected category is selected. So we can say const is selected. For now, we can set it to false, and later on we can figure it out. Now, if you've been paying attention, you can figure out that we should have used lowercase categories, not uppercase, but we don't even have access to categories right here, only category filters. So we need to pass categories as props to our filters. We can do that by going to where we're calling the filters, which is on our products page right here, and we need to pass categories is equal to categories. Then we can right here define them through props by getting the categories and defining their types as categories of a type category array. And of course, it has to come from payload types. Then we can make this lowercase. Now for each category, we have to also return something. And in this case, we'll return a checkbox. Of course, Payload has created its own checkbox component, so we can create a self-closing one, give it a key equal to category.id, give it a label equal to category.title. If we save this, now we get an error saying that this property checkbox is missing some types. But hey, that shouldn't really break our app, should it? Now, I want to share a quick tip with you. Whenever you use some custom hooks that are using some other states, or whenever you use some form components that behind the scenes might be using some specific React state functionality or browser events or anything like that, you need to make this component use client. Even though we're not explicitly using use state or forms or event handling right here, checkbox maybe is, which breaks our application. So if we add the use client right here, and it still doesn't work, let's try to figure out why that is. I'll try to give this checkbox some other properties as well. We might need to give it a value, which in this case is going to be category.id, and I'm going to also give it is selected, equal to is selected, and finally the on-click handler equal to handle categories. If we save it, now it complains that the value is not of a proper type. And if we go to the console, we can see the errors that says that there's a type error, cannot read properties of undefined, reading replace, add checkbox. That's interesting. So something with our categories and mapping over them and displaying checkboxes is breaking our app. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create custom checkbox and radio button components. It might be better than to use the checkbox that's built into the form right here. Something breaks with it. So let's go ahead and comment it out for now, just briefly. And then let's go to components, create a new folder called checkbox. Within it, we can create a new index.tsx as well as an index.module.scss. Of course, the styles are below. You already know the drill. We want to focus on the e-commerce functionality and payload here, not necessarily styling every little detail. And then in this case, I'm going to provide you with the checkbox component as well. So I'm going to simply paste it here. You can see it's a typical checkbox component where we created from bare beginnings, where we have a label and an input. And then we receive all of the props we're going to pass to it. So now if we bring back this checkbox and import it, now coming from components checkbox, you can see that now we have watches, phones, and laptops, which are the exact categories that we have created within the CMS before. Now, how can we figure out if this category has been clicked for real? Well, let's say category filters dot includes the category ID. So if it includes the current category ID, it must have been clicked. For now, this is just fake clicking. It's gonna work once we implement the handle categories function. But for the time being, let's go below this div and let's create an HR, kind of just a simple component of a horizontal rule to create some space. Let's add another h6 right here. That's going to have a class name equal to classes.title. This HR can also have a class name equal to classes.hr, and the title can say sort by. So here we can do sorting on top of filtering by creating a new div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.categories. And within it, we can create a new radio button component, which we can create in the same way that we created the checkbox by going right here to components, creating a new folder called radio, giving it a new index.module.scss, which you can copy from below, and also giving it a new index.tsx, which is a simple component which you can also copy from below and then paste here. Similar thing we're doing with the checkbox. We have a label, value, and then we simply put it in this regular HTML5 label input combo. So now if we go back and if we import the button from components radio button, we can pass it some props, such as label is set to latest, value is equal to minus created at. We can also pass is selected, and that's equal to if sort is triple equal to minus created at. Then we're going to know that it has already been clicked. We're going to have an on radio change, which can render the handle sort function, and we can give it a group name equal to sort. Of course, we're still missing this handle sort, so let's create it right here. Const handle sort is equal to just a typical empty callback function for now. We can duplicate this and create another one that can say oldest. And instead of doing minus created at, we can simply do created at. Everything else is the same. So now later on, we'll be able to sort, and we also have our wonderful checkboxes right here. Now, what do you say that we make them work? The only thing we need to do to make our sort work is to simply get the sort value right here of a type string, and then say set sort, and then pass that value. If we save it, we can now switch between, and you can see it's actually switching from latest to oldest. And to make our filters work, it's not going to be that hard, but it will require a bit more functionality than the sort. We have to figure out if the current category filters dot includes the category ID that we're currently clicking on. If it does, then we want to set category filters to new category filters containing all the filters without the one we just clicked on. So we can say const updated categories is equal to category filters dot filter, where we want to filter out the current ID if it's not equal to category ID. So we keep everything else besides the one we clicked on. And then we simply call set category filters is updated filters. Else, if we want to add a filter, then we simply set category filters, where we spread the previous category filters and append the additional category ID. So now we can actually switch between. We have watches, phones, and laptops. And for none of these products, apparently we don't have anything. Or no, we do. I think if we do laptops, no. Phones, no. Watches, no. Currently we have no products under these categories, and that makes sense because we have just created them. So it would be our turn to add some of the actual products. If I just reload, you can see the products though. But then once we start adding or filtering them, then they get removed because the search is doing its thing. So finally, let's adjust this shop page from our admin panel as well. We can go to our admin panel right here. If we log back in, of course, we need to enter our details and then go to pages, select products, and then you can choose content. Here, you can see all products, and this corresponds to what you can see right here. This is just the regular intro content, which in this case, we don't need at all, so you can remove it. Then we have populate by collection. Specifically, collection to show is products, and the limit is going to be 9, 3 rows of 3. Now, if you publish changes and go back and reload, you can see that now we can only see the products. But those products don't really look good, do they? They don't seem to be in sync with what we are aiming for, which is kind of a clean, minimalist Apple-style website. And to achieve that look, we can navigate to the card component within underscore components card. Here we have our product card with the categories and all the other good stuff. But we want to simplify it further. It's going to end up being simpler than what we can currently see here. So how can we do it? Well, first, let's put this side by side. And then we're going to wrap everything not in a div, but rather in a link. So we can turn this into a link, which of course needs to have an href equal to href. It's going to have class names of card and then class name. The div within, so this is going to be the div, is going to have a class name of media wrapper, where we can have this meta image, as well as the other media file. Below it, we want to have another div with the class name of classes.content. Here, we want to remove this entire categories part. We don't want to show the categories here. Then we have a title to use, which is going to be simplified once again. It's going to be just an h4. That's going to say something like title to use. There we go. If we save it, description is gone. Then we have a description, which is going to be a class name of classes.body. If we have a description, we simply return a p tag with a sanitized description. So this is looking good to me. And finally, the doc. But then we want to style it, and you already know the drill. Down below is going to be the modified index.module.scss, which you can paste right here, and that's going to turn these cards into this. It's a bit different, but still not entirely there. Now, the reason why this is not working perfectly yet is because the products are part of something known as a collection archive. So we're modifying the product card themselves, but still we have to modify the wrapper that's wrapping them. And to do that, we can go to a collection archive, the component that wraps the products. And specifically, we want to go down to its return statement right here. There we go. So there we are returning a div with collection archive, and we need to remove this gutter to have less space when we do loading. Now we want to simplify this layout a bit. Now here, we want to remove this gutter, and that's it for page range. Then we go down, we remove this other gutter as well, right here. And then we have a div that has a class name of classes.grid, where we go over different elements. And each one renders a card that has a relation to products with a doc result and show categories. We don't want to wrap it in a div anymore of classes.column because they're not going to be showing up in columns. They're going to be showing like this. Finally, the pagination is looking good. So now let's also apply the styles for our collection archive. And that's going to be just some minor changes. But for your convenience, once again, I left it down in the description. And now we're getting even closer to our final products look. And the last thing we need to do to achieve it is to close these two files and go to the price file. So that's going to be components price. Inside of here, you can see the price And that price is a bit different on our end. Here we also have an add to cart button, which we don't need in this case. So right here, we can remove the add to cart button by simply deleting it. We can also remove this remove from cart button as well. And we can remove the quantity. We don't need it in this case. We're going to simplify everything to have that clean, minimalistic look. And then we're going to end up with something like this, which is already closer than what we had. We can also remove those two buttons right here on top. Now, we can also modify our price styles by going to our index.module. Right below align item center, we can also add justify content and then make that space between. We can also modify the way that the price shows by giving it a font weight of 400 and giving it a font size property of 18 pixels to make it a bit larger. We can also give it a gap of 12 pixels instead of 4. We also want to modify it on small break devices by saying include add small dash break and give it a grid dash template dash columns to make it appear in 1FR like this. And we can also modify the font size to 16 pixels. And we don't need an @ sign here with small break. So after we fix this, you can see it's looking good on small devices, and as we expand it, it's still looking good. And the last thing we need to do is go to the general app.scss file, and specifically go to the anchor tag right here on line 112. There, we want to add a text decoration of, I think you can guess it, none. This is going to hide that ugly underline and going to make it look so much better. Now, this is still far away from this, but believe it or not, that's just because of the images. If you look at it, our design is the same. We just have to modify the way that these images look like. So let's go ahead and go to our admin dashboard under products, and let's delete all 3 products that we currently have. It's as easy as that. So now if we go back and reload, you can see search produced no results. So now if we go back, we can create a new product, and to check which product is it going to be, let's go to upload new media, select a file, and then as you know, I have already prepared all of the products for you if you go to public admin UI products. In this case, let's go with Apple Watch Series 9 and say something like Apple Watch 9. There we go, and click Save. Now, of course, we also have to add a title. So let's go to the deployed website, open up the Apple Watch, and let's copy the entire title and also paste it here in the title, as well as in the SEO title. We can also copy the description and paste it right here in the description. Great. Now, the last thing we have to do is add a new layout, and we're going to choose a layout of content. Finally, click Publish Changes. Our product has successfully been published. We can see that by having one product here. And later on, we're going to also attach a Stripe product to it, which means that we'll actually be able to purchase it. So if we now go back to localhost 3000/products, you can immediately see our great Apple Watch appear. So now let's add another product, specifically another product belonging to another category, so we can then test out the filters and sort as well. So let's go back to our editing in our products admin dashboard, and let's create a new product. Let's first go to our upload new media, select a file. Let's do something like this Apple iPhone 15 and say Apple iPhone 15 and click Save. We can go to the deployed website and try to find our Apple iPhone 15 amongst all products. We can copy the complete title and paste it right here at the top under title, and then under SEO title as well. And let's go ahead and copy the entire description and paste it right here. Let's not forget to go to layout and also choose content right here and publish changes. Our product has been successfully created. And now if we go back and reload, you can see that now we have a phone and an Apple Watch. So let's try to filter them. But if we do that, nothing is happening yet. So before this works, there's one more change we have to make. Let's collapse this just a bit, and let's head to collection archive. This is a component that we have modified before, but now we have to put our category filters coming from this specific use filter hook that we have created to use. So right at the top, let's say const, let's destructure the category filters as well as sort, which is equal to use filter coming from provider filter. And then we don't have to use the sort from here that's coming from props anymore. So we can remove this sort. And we can also remove these categories from props, because now we get our own category filters. With that said, we can go a bit below. And whenever we say cats from props, we can now rename this to category filters. I believe if you double click and press F2 on your keyboard, oh no, it's going to say you cannot rename this element. So we have to do it manually. So let's simply copy cats from props, press Ctrl F, and then here you can press this little arrow and replace. And here we can say category filters. So this is going to replace, if you click right here, all 6 instances of cats from props to category filters. Now we're almost there, but as you can see, it's complaining about cannot find category filters. Did you mean category filters? It does look like I misspelled it above, so let's properly import it as category filters right here. There we go. And now, if we go a bit below, we can also modify the type. No longer is it going to be of a type category, it's going to be of a type string. And we don't have to get the cat ID. We can simply just return a cat, not a real cat, just a category, and we can join them with commas. And if we scroll down, since we used rename all, it also got renamed right here in the dependency array of the use effect, so it's going to get updated whenever our category filters change. So now if we save this file and go back, you can see that the page is working again. I'm going to expand it a bit. Let's see the product categories on the left side, and let me click watches. And this time we get search produced no results. Let's also try to do phones. And once again, we get nothing. Well, at least we do get some kind of an error message or some movement happening, but now we have to figure out how to add those products to specific categories, how to give them an attribute of that category. So going back to our admin dashboard, let's try to see. Oh, there we go. On the right side, we have categories. Select a value, and this right here is surely a phone. So let's publish changes. Let's go back to products, and let's also add a category for our Apple Watch. That's going to be a watch. Let's click publish changes. And if we now go back, reload the screen, and click watches, there we go. We have our Apple Watch and we have our phone, which means that all of our filters are working perfectly. And we can also sort by latest or oldest. That means that our entire authentication page is now done. Our homepage is also looking wonderful with categories, hero section, deals of the month, and the footer. And now we have implemented the entire shop page with product categories and sorting. The next step, of course, the product details page. So now if we click on a specific product, you can see that the image is quite large. The product hasn't been added to Stripe yet, and this doesn't really look good. We want it to look like this. This is going to be our new modified and kind of minimalistic Apple style product details page. So let's collapse our screen, close this file, and let's get started by modifying this to look more like this. First, let's adjust the default product hero. We can do that by going to _heroes and then /product. There, we can modify the hero of that specific product. So what we can do is scroll all the way to the top right here, line 26. And we can remove this entire first starting fragment talking about Stripe. We'll surely connect this product to Stripe later on. For now, we can remove it. There we go. And also we need to close the closing fragment as well. If you save that, it's looking good. Now our getter is going to have a class name of classes.productHero. Then we can remove this content div. So just remove it. And of course, we have to close it right here below the add to cart button. So we can remove the closing part of that div. And we want to move some things around. Here we have our categories, but in our case, we want to show the image first. So what we can do is we can move this entire div that says media and media wrapper above by copying it and then putting it directly within product hero. We don't need a class of media. We're just going to keep the one that says media wrapper. So you can delete this one and we have a media wrapper. There we render a placeholder image if we have one, and then we render a real image. Finally, we can remove this entire part about a meta image and rich text. We won't be needing that. And then after the closing of the actual media wrapper, we can create a new div that's going to render the details. If we search for details, we don't have any right now. So let's create a new class name that's going to say classes.details. And then within it, we can render an h3 that's going to render the title property. And we can give it a class name equal to classes.title. If we save this, you should be able to see that now we have a title right here, and it's looking closer to what we have here. So we can definitely remove this entire title right here, an h1, right? There we go. Okay, we're getting there. Now let's modify the classes a bit. We have to make our image look more like this, our title smaller, description smaller, and we're going for that minimalistic look. So you can go to product index.module.scss, and you already know the drill. Where you found all the other styles, you can find this one. That's going to be product.module.scss, and you can paste it, save it, and then we're gonna look like this. Now we're still not done. There are still some modifications we have to make. So let's try to go below the title. And while still being inside of the details, we can create a new div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.category wrapper. Within it, we can then render these categories. So let's take these categories and move them a bit up to within the category wrapper. And if we go back, it's going to look like this. And then we want to modify this fragment right here. It's going to be a p tag because we want to give it a class name as well, specifically a class name of classes.category. So this is going to give it that pop, or not yet, but it will soon. Now next to the title, we have if not is last, then we display an empty space. And after that, we want to add a span element. This span is going to have a class name equal to classes.separator. That's because this is going to be a simple separator character, just a straight line like this. And then below this div, we can render a p tag that's going to simply say in stock, and it's going to have a class name equal to classes.inStock, or just stock is going to be fine. There we go. So now we say it is in stock. Now we have to further modify the spacing here because it's not as it is right here. We have to say description. So we want to go below this div where we have the in stock, and we want to render our price. We can pull the price from below. We already have it here. So let's pull it right there and save it. And then we can have a div with a class name equal to classes.description. That class name doesn't have to be on the p tag itself. And then we can remove all of this content from here, and we're going to make a much simpler description with an h6 that's going to say description. And we can simply render a p tag that's going to render the actual description. If we save this, you can notice now it says description. Now we also want to move our price next to the description right here, so they're in the same level. And we still cannot see the price as we can see it here, so we'll be able to make a small modification soon. So to check why our price is not showing, let's dive into it by control clicking it and then double clicking right here, which is going to lead us to the price component. Here we have the product, we're setting the price with the actual price and with quantity. We have a use effect to set it up. And then finally, we have a div. Within this div, we check if the actual price is not defined and if the quantity exists. And then we return a div with a class name of price, where we say price.withQuantity. So this is looking good to me, and here we're calling it in the right way. So let's try to expand this just a bit. And you can see it's not responsiveness, it's still not showing, but we do have an empty space for it right here. If we go to another product, maybe go back to shop and then the Apple Watch, you can see it's not showing still. Now ask yourself, why? Or better yet, have we ever added the price in the first place? I don't think we did. So if we go back to the admin dashboard and click on the Apple Watch, here, if we expand it, it's going to be easier to see, but we have to add a price somewhere. Specifically, the price is going to get added once we connect this product to Stripe. Then it's going to pull the values directly from there, so this product is going to mirror the product on Stripe. So more on that soon, but for now, it's good to know that our layout is good, it's just missing the actual value. Finally, below this div, we have the Add to Cart button that accepts a product and a class name, which looks great. Immediately below, we have related products. And if you check the deployed version, you can notice that here we don't have any kind of a description, rather we just have a list of related products. So how can we make that happen? Well, we can go to the product details page by going to slug, like this, specifically slug under each individual product. That's the product details page. Here, we're rendering different blocks of this page. And we can see a block that says something like, the products displayed here are individually selected for this page. Same thing that it says here. So how can we modify that? Well, first of all, we don't need the layout, so we can remove it from here. We can remove this blocks of layout, as we don't want to render any additional blocks. Then we can turn this into just a regular simple React fragment. We can modify this from H4 to H3 to make it a bit bigger. And the only thing you have to do, delete this object that contains this p tag right here. So we simply delete it. If we save it, you can see that related products got a bit bigger and there's no description left. That's great. You can notice that now this is touching the button, which is not really the best look we want to give it. So let's go into related products /index.module.scss and let's make some minor tweaks. We can give it a class of .related products, which is going to have a width of 100%. And then we want to modify the grid. So in the grid, let's remove everything we have right now besides the display grid. Let's give it a padding of 0, then a grid -template -columns, repeat 3, and then min-max 30%, and 1 FR. I don't really use grids often, but in cases like these, they can really be useful. Of course, if you spell columns correctly. Now we can show 3 related products. Then we can also delete this column span. And instead of a span of 6, we can only give it a gap of 20 pixels. And on small break, we're going to say template-columns of 100%. Finally, since we don't have columns half or thirds, we can completely remove those classes and just say .title font weight is 400 and margin bottom is about 30 pixels, which is going to give us the space that we need. Of course, only when we actually go to the related products component. And then on top, right here within the gutter, add a new H3 that's going to have a class name of title, and it's going to say related products. Of course, this has to be classes.title. If you save it, now you see 2 related products. So let's remove the other one. And we can do that by removing this intro content from here. And we don't need to import it anymore from props. So now we have only 1. And we can significantly simplify the return right here. We can look into the docs. If they exist, that's great. If not, return null. And then the only thing we need to return is going to be the card. We can remove the columns that we have here by simply saying return card, and we can leave everything else as it is. of course, while removing the closing brackets, parentheses, and everything else. So now if you save it and reload, you can still see the product, but it kind of stretches too much. So of course, let's see if we have done our classes properly. Our related products has a width of 100. Here we have a position of relative. Then right here within the grid, we have a display of grid, a padding of 0. We have grid template columns of relete. No, it's going to be repeat. That's a mistake on my end. And we can also give it a gap of 30 pixels. So now if we save it, you can see that now our product appears in 1/3, but that's not exactly how it should look like. If we're on small devices, they should go one below another in a column, not in a row. So let's see what else do we have here. Instead of within the column, our small break and mid break should actually be going within the grid. So this was a mistake on my end. So now if we save this, you can see on small devices, it's going to behave differently. Or it will behave differently once I specify columns correctly right here. And there we go. Now we're good. Now, if we compare this with the finished website, you can see that it's looking great, but we're missing some space right here below the Add to Cart button. Don't worry, we're gonna fix it really soon. And I think it's this part of the same problem where here, we're also missing some space between the products. And here we have some extra space. So if we compare it, as you can see, it's looking quite different. And I think that's because the description and add to cart should go within the div where the title and everything else is, whereas here we put it below. So let's go to our heroes and then /product. Here we have our description and everything. So let's see if we're properly unwrapping everything in our divs. Here we're starting with the details and we're ending it here. But rather, this div should be ending after the add to cart button. If we now put all of this inside, you're going to notice that the situation is going to change. Now, recently, the app started breaking a bit, but if you just reload one more time, it should be working. And now everything fits nicely, and you can see the related products below. And I believe we can fix this related products issue by going to our collections, /products, and then index.ts. Here, we have a special layout property, and we're saying that this content has to be required. And that shouldn't really be the case for our app. Why? Because if you check out our products, you can notice that we have added the layout, but it's not really necessary. We're never using it. So we can make the content or the layout not required in this case. And then we can rerun the two commands we used before. Yarn payload generate, GraphQL schema. While that is happening, we can stop our application from running by pressing Ctrl+C and then Y. And once this command runs, we can also generate the types. What this is going to do is it's going to modify the payload types. So if we go here under layout or under product specifically, you're going to notice that layout will now be optional. So if we rerun our application by running the npm run dev, and if you reload your admin dashboard, go back here and delete the layout and publish, now it's going to allow you to do so. We can do the same thing with our Apple iPhone 15 Pro as well. Remove and publish. So now if we go back and reload, the app still breaks. So if we open up inspect and then go to console, we can see a couple of different errors. Well, it's more or less one, more of the same. So here, if we look into it, it does point us to related products line 32. That could be useful. So if we go back, press Ctrl+P, go to related products, index.tsx, line 29 or 30, you can see that we're mapping over our card, but we're not passing a key. That might be the error. You know, all of these times in all of these videos when I was telling you to add a key on the element you're mapping, you thought, okay, it's just a warning, it doesn't matter. But in situations like these, in bigger applications, it truly does matter because it can interrupt the flow of the application. Well, I'm just guessing. Maybe this is not the solution, but let's check it out. I'm going to pass a doc dot, let's see, ID as the key. This is the best key we can give it, not the index we're getting from here. Great. So now let's save this and let's reload. the error seems to be gone. That's good. If I reload one more time, it seems to be working well. That's great. So now let's add some margin to this related products header. We can do that by going to related products index.module.scss and then give it a padding top of something like var dash dash base. This is going to just give it a bit of padding. I think that's more than enough. So with that said, we have a great looking product details page, which we can expand and ensure that it looks good. It still does. And we can also check the mobile view. Looks amazing as well. So now, of course, the next logical step is to add the product to the cart. We can do that already. The functionality is there, but the cart now looks like this, and we want it to look something like this. There we go. Much cleaner, much better. So let's go from this to this. To do that, I'm going to collapse our browser, close all the files, and then open up the cart/page.tsx page. Inside of here, we can remove this entire hero saying that this is a cart and what it is for. So we can scroll down and we can take everything from the hero, including the hero, to above, right below the fragment, and we can remove it. If we save it, already that's a more minimalistic cart. Then right here, below the gutter, we can add an H3. It's going to say just cart. And right here under blocks, we can add the disable bottom padding is set to true. I think a shorthand is just by doing this, automatically that's going to be set to true. So now we have something resembles this a bit more, but of course we have to modify the styles. So if we go to index.module.scss, we can remove this message and add a dot container that's going to have a margin dash top of 50 pixels to create some space. It's also going to have a width of 100%. Finally, on small break, so include small dash break, we're going to give it a margin top of a bit smaller, 30 pixels. And if we go back, we have to actually utilize that container. So we're going to turn this fragment right here into a div with a class name equal to classes.container. If we save it, you can notice it looks a bit different. It gives some spacing, but still it's far away from looking like this. So now we'll have to modify something known as a cart page and then a cart item. Cart item is this, the item in the cart. You can see it looks quite different. It's essentially one row or one line of items. Here, it's just big, it's in your face, and we're gonna make it look something like this. So let's close the page and do that right away. To get started, we can head to Pages, and specifically, we want to go to Cart, where we were just before. But now we want to create a new folder within the cart called Cart Item. Within it, of course, we'll create a new index.tsx where we can run RAFCE. We can, of course, rename it to Cart Item. And we're going to also create a new index.module.scss within the cart item. And there you can paste the corresponding cart item module SCSS. And then go back here and import it by saying import classes from /index.module.scss. Next, we can create a simple cart item by wrapping it in an li. So it's a list item that's going to have a class name equal to classes.item. And within it, for now, we can simply render an h6 that can render the title. For now, static, but soon enough, dynamic. Now, if we go back to our website, nothing really changed. So where can we call this cart item? We're going to call it within cart page index.tsx. Here we have a lot of stuff happening right here. So we are initializing the cart. If it's empty, we show that it's empty. If it's not, we show the items and so on. So you can see a lot of stuff is happening here. But we want to get rid of most of that. But for now, let's simply utilize the cart item. We can do that within the UL. So if we search for items list, you can see that here we're calling the items, and then here we're mapping over them, cart.items.map. For each one, we get a type of, a quantity, product, and item, and then we return this entire fragment. For now, we're going to delete that entire fragment, going all the way down. We don't need that much stuff, and the only thing we're gonna return is a cart item. So let's specify it and import it from /cart item and close it right here. There are a couple of things that we need to pass to it, such as, of course, the entire product. We also need to pass the title. We can then pass a meta image, not a mate image, but a meta image right here, equal to meta image. All the things that we were previously displaying right here. We need to pass the index as well. We can pass the QTY as quantity and the add item to cart, which is going to be a function, of course, adding the item to cart. So let's save this and let's go into the cart item and let's accept all of these props right into it. We can accept a product, a title, a meta image, a quantity or QTY, an add item to cart, and then an index as well. Since we'll be mapping over this, we can provide a key right here equal to, let's do title. All products should be unique. And in that case, I believe we don't even need to pass an index. So if I go back and remove the index, we should be good to go. Now back in cart item, we're gonna also define a new use state. And that's going to be quantity and set quantity as well. At the start, set to QTY. So we're gonna use this default value, but we'll also allow our users to modify the quantity later on in case they want to. So let's import useState from React, and immediately, therefore, we have to make our function or our component a useClient component. Now, of course, if you reload the page, I don't believe it's gonna work, or yeah, it will, but it says your cart is empty. So I'm gonna go back to shop, and I'm gonna re-add a product right there. Add to cart. There we go. There is one item in your cart. Now we can only see the title. So now we know what we're working on. And now that we know that, we can start working on JSX. But before, let's create a couple of functions we'll use, such as decrement, QTY. That's going to be just a typical React arrow function. We, of course, want to have increment QTY, and we're going to have the enter QTY as well. So const enter QTY, because we'll be able to enter it manually as well. And that should be good. We can start creating the look of our cart item to look like this. So first, we're wrapping everything in an li, and then right here, we're gonna then render a link component. This link is going to have an href equal to /products/product.slug with a class name equal to classes.media wrapper. Within this link, we're going to render a new dynamic block saying that if there is no meta image, then we can render a span saying no image. But right below that, if there is an image, so if meta image and type of meta image is not equal to a string, then we can simply render that image by using the built-in media property, which is coming from components media. To that media, we can pass a class name equal to classes.media. We can pass the img class name, which is going to be equal to classes.image. And of course, we want to pass the resource equal to meta image, and finally give it a property of fill. And of course, we have to import the link coming from next link. If we do that and reload the page, we still cannot see anything. I think that's because our cart got emptied again. So before I add another item to the cart, let me go to login. I'm gonna sign in with my account using this beautiful sign-in page. I get redirected to this great page where I already have one product in my cart, which is a watch. And now we can see the image, and if you click on it, it's going to lead you back to the watch details page, and then you can go back and continue. Now, below this link, we want to have a div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.itemDetails. Within that div, we want to have another div with a class name equal to classes.title wrapper. And of course, there we can render an H6 property where we're going to render the dynamic title. There we go, Apple Watch Series 9. Right below, we can render the price, which is coming from underscore components / price. And to it, we need to pass a product equal to product and a button equal to false, as it's not a button. It just says the price. So if we save it, you would hope you can see the price, but you cannot, because remember, we didn't yet connect this product to Stripe. We're going to do that as soon as we're done with the cart. Now, going below this div, we can create a new div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.quantity. Within it, we can have another div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.quantity button. And on click, we want to decrement quantity in this case. So that's going to be decrement quantity. And there, we want to render an image. So that's a self-closing image tag, which we can import from next image. It's going to have a source equal to /assets /icons /minus.svg. We can also add a few more properties, such as the alt tag of minus, a width of about 24 pixels, and a height of 24 as well as a class name of classes.qtnbt. There we go. So now if we save it, and if we properly spell height and class name, we should be able to see this quantity button. But it looks like our cart got emptied again. That's unfortunate. If I go back to shop, yep, it still seems the cart is empty. If I go to homepage, it is empty, so I have to re-add the product. Okay, that's definitely something we can look into later on, so we don't have to reload every time. But for now, let's just duplicate this entire div right below. And of course, we're going to make it say increment QTI. We're going to also render the plus SVG, change the alt tag to plus, and above that increment, we also want to have an input. So keep in mind, on the left side, we have a minus, on the right side, we have a plus, and then here, we have an input for manual entering of the quantity. So that's going to be a simple input that's going to have a type is equal to text, a class name equal to classes.quantity input, value is set to quantity, and on change is equal to, we get an event, and then we call enter quantity, to which we can also pass an event. And whenever you call functions like this, you can simply then use the function declaration. There we go. So now if we save it, you can see that we have -1 plus. It looks like we have in right here, which we don't need. And this is now getting closer to what we need. Let's see if we have properly spelled quantity. It looks like we have, but this minus button is still a bit off. So if we look at quantity button, it's supposed to be a quantity BTN. That's how we have declared it in styles. So I can modify this as well as this to quantity BTN, and now we are good. Of course, they're not going to modify the values yet, but we're going to implement that soon. Finally, we want to go 3 divs down, 1, 2, 3, and then here we want to show the total. So we can do a div with a class name equal to classes.subtotal wrapper, and there we're again going to show the price. Of course, we need to pass the product as well. And as before, we're going to pass a button set to false, but this time we're going to pass quantity equal to quantity. So we're not referring to one product, but multiple in case there are many. And finally, we also want to render a remove from cart button coming from components, where we want to add a product into it, just like so. So now we have the remove button as well. Now, as you can see, it's looking quite similar. Of course, once we connect it to Stripe, we'll be able to see those two prices right there. And you can see we'll have to modify the actual trash icon because this remove is a bit ugly. So let's move into the remove from cart button by control clicking it. And then here we have a button, but instead of saying remove, this button can render an image. That's going to be a Next.js self-closing image tag coming from next image. That's going to have a source equal to /assets /icons /delete.svg. We can also give it an alt tag of delete, a width of 24 as before, a height of 24, and a class name equal to classes.qtn button, or BT for short. And there we go. And if you have that ugly button outline, this class should remove it. So remove from cart. It is all unset. That removes all the original button styles. So now this is looking great. And with that, our cart item is done. So we're getting close to having this. Now we can focus on this nice looking summary and log into checkout button. So let's go back to cart page and let's go below the cart item. That's this HR, which is a horizontal rule. We have it here as well. On the deployed website, we don't have it, but rather we have this box. So let's go ahead and implement it together. We can remove both the HR and the H5. Button we can leave for now, but let's place it in a new div. This div is going to have a class name equal to classes.summary. And we can put the button right within it. There we go. So if we save it and go back, it didn't change too much, but this now allows us to create a couple of rows of different prices. So let's create a new div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.row. And within it, we can have an H6 that's going to say summary. We can also give it a class name equal to classes.cart total. So if we save it, you can see the summary, but I noticed it's way too high. So we should have actually wrapped our cart items in a UL. So right here, you can add a UL, an unordered list, and properly close it right here at the bottom below the cart items, right here. There we go. We can give that UL a class name equal to classes.itemsList. And here, if we do have the cart, so if it's not empty, that is this part right here, we can simplify some things. We don't necessarily say there are this many items in your cart. The users can see that visually from our new design. So we can remove almost everything that we have here and rename the div to classes.cartWrapper. Within that cart wrapper, we can have another div. Within that div, we can show the cart list header, which is essentially going to be a div with a class name equal to classes.header. And then below that header, we want to show a cart list item. So cart item list. So that means that we have to pull this entire UL right here above within this div. There we go, and save it. But now it's not going to allow me to save it because I have to properly close our divs. I do believe we have one div extra, so I'm going to remove this one, and then we're good. I'm going to go back to shop and add a new phone, and we can see it right here at the top. But now everything is a bit more structured, and we can polish our header now by correcting this to class name, and then here we can have a p tag that's going to say products. Also, right below, we can have a div that's going to have a class name equal to classes.header item details. There, we can render a p tag that's going to say quantity, and below, we can render another p tag that's going to say subtotal. It's going to have a class name equal to classes.header subtotal, like this, with a lowercase s. And you might be wondering, hey, why did we add the product's quantity and subtotal right here? It doesn't make any sense. Well, if you check the deployed website, you can see that they're hidden on mobile. But if you expand, they nicely show the products, quantity, and subtitle right here. So the only thing we need to do to make that happen is go to our index.module.styles of the cart page and then modify it right here by replacing the CSS style sheet. That's going to make it look much better. With that said, we can continue where we left off right here in the classes.row where we show the summary. We can duplicate this entire div with a row, and the second one, instead of summary, is going to say delivery charge. That's going to be a p tag, which we can duplicate below, and that can be set to 0. And we can duplicate it one final time right below. And here we can say something like grand total, and then we can render a variable of cart total dot formatted. There we go. And now we have everything we had before. But still, keep in mind that the price is 0 because we haven't connected our Stripe products. We're going to do that soon. If we are logged in, this button is going to say checkout, else it's going to say log into checkout, which means that it's working perfectly. There's also the continue shopping, which is good, but here we also have some additional text which we don't need. So to get rid of it, we can do exactly what it says. This is a custom layout building block configurable in the CMS. So let's go to the CMS. Let's go to Pages, Cart, and then here, if we expand it, we can see some kind of a content, and there we go. In the content, we have our column, which for now we can completely remove and publish changes. If we do that and reload the page, this block is completely gone. So it looks great on mobile. We have our footer, we can continue shopping, which also works, and we can go to checkout. But before we go to checkout, let's just check how it works on large devices. There we go. We're almost there. I can see the quantity is above the title, not the actual quantity. Whereas on the final design, it is right here. So let's look into why that is not working. We can go to our quantity, which should be right here in cart page. And then here we have a cart list header. The simplest possible fix would be to add about 2 empty p tags. I think 1 is not enough, but if we add 2, it's going to move it just enough so that it actually says quantity above the quantity. So now if we expand it, it's looking good on all different devices. And that reminded me, hey, we haven't yet implemented the functionality for the quantity. So for that, we have to go into our cart item, and then we have to implement those functions, decrement, increment, and enter quantity. Doing that is quite straightforward. Let's implement the decrement first. There, we can say const updated QTY is equal to, if quantity is greater than 1, then quantity minus 1, else we're going to keep it at 1. Then we want to set quantity to be equal to updated quantity, and we want to add item to cart with a specific product like this inside of an object, but we want to pass the quantity, which is going to be set to updated quantity, which we want to convert to number. There we go. Now we can duplicate this right here below and paste it to increment quantity. This time the updated is going to be simpler. It's just going to be quantity plus 1, not minus 1. We set the quantity here and we update the product. And finally, for entering the quantity, we get an event right here. And then we get const updated QTY is equal to target value, but we do want to convert it to a number. There we go. And we don't want our TypeScript to complain, so we can say this is of a type React dot change event HTML input element. There we go. And then we can do the same thing we've done before, set quantity and add item to cart. So now we can modify the number of items, and we can also manually change it. This is great, and we cannot go below 0. Let's also try to remove it. That works as well. If we go back to shop, let's try to add both products that we currently have. The iPhone is added, and let's also add the watch. There we go. This is great. Now, the next thing we have to do is actually connect these products to Stripe so that they have a specific value connected with them. Because right now, we cannot see their price. So before we move to checkout, we're going to have a big and quite an interesting task, which is to integrate Stripe. Quite exciting. Great job for coming this far into the video. You're amazing. And now let's implement Stripe. To get started with adding Stripe, you can go to stripe.com. And I say it every time, but I'm going to say it again. This is one of the most beautifully designed landing pages as of today. So without looking at it too much, let's go to Start Now, and then either create your Stripe account or sign in. Once you log in, you can open up your dashboard. Specifically, you need to toggle on the test mode. Then you can go to Developers, API Keys, and then you can copy your publishable key, which we can move to our code base by going right here, going to our .env, and then you can simply paste it right here below under Next Public Stripe Publishable Key. Similarly, you can reveal your secret key, copy it, and then paste it right here under Stripe Secret Key. Once you do that, it says reload env, but I always like to just reload my application manually as well to ensure that the changes have been saved. So let's rerun our application. Then you can go back to your admin dashboard, open up products, go to one of our products, go to product details, and here it's going to ask you to add a Stripe ID or select a new product from Stripe. Or we can create a new one if we haven't yet. So go ahead and click this link. Once you're here, we can add similar data that we have here in the SEO section of our product. So this one is going to be Apple iPhone 15 Pro. We can also copy the description. Under product tax code, we can do something like, let's do a technology maybe, or it's going to be electronics. Let's see, electronic. This is electronic software. Let's try to search for phone. Mobile phones, there we go. Feel free to choose whatever you want. This is for testing purposes only. And then we have price information, which is really important. We can choose a standard pricing model, and you can enter a price. For example, let's do something like $999. In this case, let's do American dollars. You can choose whether you want to include tax in the price or not. And this is going to be a one-time payment. And it is as easy as that. Now you can save your product, and you can go back to your admin dashboard, scroll up, reload the page, and under product details, select a value for a Stripe product, and there we go. We can connect the two. Let's publish changes. And let's do the same thing for Apple Watch. So we can go here, Apple Watch, product details, create a new one. We can immediately copy the product title, as well as a product description. This is going to be a smart watch. There we go. And we can make it standard pricing. Let's do something like 300 American dollars. And it's going to be a one-time payment. Now, I just noticed that I forgot to add an image. So let's also upload an image. It's going to be this Apple Watch. And we can save the product. And we can also go back to our previous Apple product. And we can go edit it. So you can go under edit. And then you can upload an image. So here we can choose Apple iPhone 15 and upload the product. There we go. Let's go ahead and connect our Apple Watch as well by going here, reloading, and then selecting a new value of Apple Watch Series 9 and click Publish. Immediately, if we go back to our website, you'll be able to see that now all of these items have corresponding prices attached to them. Not only that, we can see the individual price, and we can also see the price get updated as we have a larger quantity of that item. Trust me, working on an e-commerce like this from scratch and making sure that all of these variables are correct, like the individual item price, that the price matches the Stripe product, then the quantity price, and then the total price, and then especially if taxes are playing a role or delivery fees, it's just a mess. But thankfully, Payload makes it so easy to implement all of this, so now if you want to just get one of each item, the prices are reflected, and the checkout button works and leads you to our checkout. Yeah, we're there. We're the final step of our journey. But now it's our turn to turn this checkout into a checkout that's going to look a bit more like this. Clean, simple, as before. So with that said, let's collapse this right here and let's implement this wonderful inline checkout, which looks great for mobile devices as well. To get started, we can first simplify our checkout by going to checkout/page.tsx. Here, as you can see, we have a lot of stuff which we don't necessarily need. So we can go all the way to the return and remove this entire fragment and everything that is within it. And when I say everything, I really mean everything, besides this bottom checkout page part. So let's wrap everything in a simple div, like so. And then let's put the gutter within the checkout page right here within it. If we save this, you can see that now we have just the products here. And we can also give this div a class name equal to classes.checkout. The gutter doesn't have to have a class name. Then we can quickly go to the index.module.scss, and instead of checkout page, we can do the .checkout class and give it a margin of 50 pixels on top and bottom and 0 on left and right, a width of 100%, and include small dash break, margin top 30 pixels, like so. So now if we save it, we're just going to get some additional space, and that's it. We have the products and we have our checkout. Now we can close those two pages and then go to checkout page, index.tsx. So this is really similar to what we had with cart. If you remember, we had cart item, cart page, and then the original page, inside of which we created our cart item. And let me remind you what that is. It looked really similar to what it looks like on the checkout. So for that reason, I'm going to provide you with the files for the checkout. Starting with the checkout item, we can create a new folder right here in checkout called checkout item. It's going to have a new index.tsx. And since it's so similar to our cart item, I'm going to give you access to the code right below. So simply paste it here, and you'll be able to notice that it's using that same media to display the image, and then it shows the quantity and the subtotal. And we also need to get its corresponding SCSS file by creating a new index.module.scss and pasting the styles right here. And then we can close those two and modify the checkout page, not this one, but rather the index within the checkout page, to actually use that checkout item. We can override the entire component with the code that I'm going to share below. Once again, it's quite similar to the code we had in the cart. So once you paste it here, you'll be able to see something that looks like this. And we can repeat the same thing for the index.module, where you can override the classes. Once you do that, we'll have something that looks like this. A wonderful looking and quite minimalistic and simple checkout, with the same thing we had before in the cart, which is a summary of the items we're ordering, but this time, right below, we have our payment details. And even if we expand it, you can see that it looks great, everything is visible right away, and you can enter your card details. So what do you say that we try purchasing an iPhone and an Apple Watch? Whenever you're purchasing something with Stripe, there's a test card that they give you. It goes 424242. I think you get the idea. Just keep saying 42 until the end. For expiration, you can also enter any date in the future, and you can enter a random CVC. You can choose your country and press checkout. And just like that, we have our order confirmation page. And while we're here, let's style it to match our minimalistic theme. We can do that by going back and then heading to order confirmation page, index.tsx. Within here, we can first change this button that points to orders, and we can simply make it point to account /orders /order ID, and we can do the same thing right here /account /orders. Then we can go to the corresponding index.module.scss. Keep in mind we're within the order confirmation page and we only have actions here. So let's give it a justify content equal to center, as well as a margin top of about 30 pixels. Okay, that's better already, especially on larger devices. And let's also style our regular, not order confirmation page, but just the order confirmation by adding a couple more class names, such as padding -top of 50 pixels, display of flex direction of column, align items of center, justify content of center, and text align of center as well. And finally, the p tag within the confirmation page can have a margin top of about 16 pixels. There we go. So now if we expand it, you can see that now even our order confirmation page looks just a tiny bit better. But now, if you go to view all orders, you're going to notice a 404 page. That's because I purposefully changed the URL we're going to. The original account page is simply under /orders, and you can still see it if you go there. It looks like this, and then the account page looks something like this. Everything is on a simple page, and while it works, it doesn't look so good. Since users really don't care what's happening after they purchase your products, this is an optional part. It works, it's functional, you can see purchase products and orders, so all is well. But as you know, here at JSM, we always like to go a step further. So I have prepared a challenge for you. Modifying all of the payload components and understanding how it truly works definitely has a learning curve. And to ensure you've learned how to properly use it, which means traversing the files, folders, and creating new files, components, and styles, the challenge for you is to convert this to this. This is a much cleaner looking account page, which matches our minimalistic vibe. You have our orders right here. You can go to personal info and change it, go under my purchases, my orders, or even log out, everything from this account screen. And to achieve this look, we'll mostly have to modify all of the account pages. So if you go to pages, you'll see an account folder where we have an account form, and we'll be able to add many other files and folders here later on. We'll need to modify the form as well as the original account page to make this happen. It doesn't have to look like this, but you can use this just as an example. Of course, you'll be able to refer to the finished deployed website. And in case you don't want to follow this design, but do it some other way, I still invite you to do that. Because from modifying the files on your own, not by following the video tutorial, you'll become an independent developer that can now do it by itself. So you can now achieve things by yourself after having learned all the useful knowledge from this video. And of course, if you get stuck, there's going to be a whole section with all of the code needed to achieve this look in the same markdown where you have been getting all of the other code for this project so far. Once you complete it, your codebase should look something like this. Everything should be contained within the account folder. In the pages folder, there's going to be an account form, orders, purchases, user info, and within orders, we also have a specific order ID. The goal is to build on top of what Payload Starter Template for e-commerce provides us with, and then add and change your own styles. Once again, the entire code, as well as the entire zip of the completed account folder is going to be down below. So in case you get stuck, just delete yours and add a new one. That's going to give you with this wonderful new, beautiful look. And with that said, we're getting really close to running our app in production. It's all starting to look so good. Now, before we deploy our app, there are a couple of fixes we have to implement. One bug that you might not have even noticed is what happens if we switch our device theme to dark. I'm gonna do that right now and reload the page. And as you can notice, we have this dark background here and half of the text is not legible. So to fix this, we can go back to code and navigate to theme index.tsx. Right here on line 49, where we're setting the attribute of data theme of theme to set, we can just make it the default theme, like so, and also set theme state to default theme. And then we can right here modify the theme to be also the default theme. So now if we save it and reload the page, you can notice we're back on light even though my device is set to dark. The second fix is not for a bug that we have created, but recently there is a specific unsolved bug in Next.js, unhandled runtime error. So sometimes in our code, we do get this unhandled runtime error, and this issue still hasn't been solved. It's happening only in production in a couple of cases. As you can see, we would have noticed the same issue in production. But thankfully, there is a quick fix, and that is to go to init theme index.tsx, and then here we can simply comment out the before interactive strategy. That way it's not going to apply it, and that's going to get rid of that error that we might have seen in the future if we didn't remove this line. Great, the fixes are done and we're one step closer to deployment. But before we proceed, we have to ensure that our product images that we upload on localhost are the same on our production application as well. And thankfully, to ensure that, Payload has created a Payload Cloud plugin. It's an official plugin that connects our Payload instance to the resources that Payload Cloud provides, essentially giving you access to file storage. So, how to use it? We simply have to install add Payload CMS /plugin cloud by going here and running it in our second terminal, npm install add Payload CMS /plugin cloud. Then we can scroll down to accessing file storage from local environment. This is what we want to do. Then let's copy it, go back to our env, and here we can paste it right at the bottom. You're going to notice that a couple of these, such as port, are going to be the same. So we can simply remove the port from here, as we already have it above. MongoDB URI is going to be in the databases tab, and I think we already have it. It's the same one as the database URI here, so we can paste it. Payload Cloud Project ID you can get from settings and then billing. So if you open up your project on Payload and go to settings and then billing, you can see your project ID, which we can copy and then put it right here as Payload Cloud Project ID. And the last one is Payload Secret from settings environment variables. So right here, we should be able to see our secret. There we go, almost all of the variables are here. So if we search for secret, we're looking at payload secret. And specifically, this is going to be the one at the bottom. So you can simply copy it and paste it right here. Usually never share this with anybody else. In this case, I'm just sharing it as these codes will be deleted right after the video recording is done. Now, we still have plenty of these variables to fill. So we can fill them by going to file storage, and then all of them are here. So we'll have to copy one by one. So let me put this a bit to the side. We have a Cognito user pool ID. So we can copy it and simply paste it right here. That's going to be user pool ID. Then we have the user pool client ID, which is going to go right here. Then we have the identity pool ID, which is this one to the right. That's going to go to the identity. Then we need the bucket, and we can get to the bucket by expanding this a bit and finding bucket name. It's right here. We also have a bucket region right here. So let's copy the EU West or whatever else you chose. And then we have a password, which you can find right here by simply copying it and pasting it. And I'm going to wrap it in string signs just to be sure right here. And with that, I believe we have successfully filled in all of the variables, as well as the payload secret, and we also have all of the previous ones right here. So all of this is looking good. I know there's a lot of keys. Take your time while copying this over and ensure that you copy the right ones, but essentially you just have to match the name here to the name of the environment variable. With that said, I'm going to reload our terminal. We can wait for our server to start. And now you'll be able to see that even our hero image is right here, nicely synced, as well as all the other images. If we go to our phones, you can see we have our phone image right here as well. So why have we done this? Well, now we're syncing the images from our local host to our production environment as well. So no matter whether you upload or create products here or in production, it's going to work. If this doesn't work immediately for you, try to give it 1 to 2 minutes. And if the hero image won't show after a couple of refreshes, just re-upload it and then restart the server and try again, and it should be there. Let's try to log in one more time. There we go. These images are here as well. We can get in and let's go to shopping. This is looking really good, but let's go ahead and add another laptop as well. We can do that by going to our CMS, products, and you already know the drill. Create a new one, upload a new media. In this case, it's going to be, let's do this one, 15-inch MacBook Air. So we can say 15-inch MacBook Air, save, and from the deployed website, and we can find it on the deployed website by going to laptops. You can see how fast the app is on the deployed version. We can copy the title, copy the description as well. And the meta image, I believe, should be getting read correctly. And don't forget, this SEO title should also be here within our main title as well. Then we can go to product details and we can create a new Stripe product. You see how easy it is now that you know what you have to do. Once again, we're going to copy the title. We're going to copy over the description as well. And we're going to upload an image. Then this is going to be a laptop. So let's say personal computers. And we can charge something like 1,600 USD for it. And it's going to be a one-time payment. Let's click Save Product. Let's go back and publish changes on this product. And then under Product Details, you can select a value and choose a 15-inch MacBook Air and publish changes once again. If you go back, you should be able to immediately see the laptop on your screen, but as you can see, the image is broken. So let's try to fix it together. If I go here and try to re-upload an image by going to Meta Image and upload it, and let's try 15-inch MacBook Air once again and click Save. You can see that still the image doesn't get uploaded correctly. And I like it when that happens in a tutorial because it allows us to debug this together. One thing that we could try to do is go back to our code and then notice this media folder. Here are all the images we have uploaded so far. Let's delete it. We don't need it anymore as now our files are stored on the cloud. So if we do this and try to re-upload the image one more time and say 15-inch MacBook Air, and still we can see that even though it's a good thing to remove that media folder, that didn't fix our upload error. A quick look into our terminal is going to immediately point out to the error. It says error getting the file from cloud storage. Both user pool ID and client ID are required. So let's go to our envs one more time. And they are referring to the user pool ID and the client ID. So let's see where those are. We have a user pool ID right here, which we have added, and the client ID right here. Both have values attached to them. Oh, but maybe the way I pasted them didn't add them to the same line. So if I just remove it, oh, now it's in the same line. There we go, and I have to do it for all the other ones too. It needs to look like this. There we go, that's better. And if I expand it, you can see that now all variables are connected to specific values. So now I'm going to stop our server from running and run npm run dev one more time. And now back in here, let's try the upload for the third time. Third time's the charm, as they say. So now if I say 15-inch MacBook Air and save, you can see that now the image appears. So if we publish it and go back and reload, everything works perfectly. And it was just a small mismatch with our envs, but now we know that they're good. So if you're experiencing any errors, just please ensure that the envs are exactly as they should be. So the only thing we need to do to get our app deployed is push the code we have so far. As you can see, I have 46 commits right here. You might have a few more, but in any case, we can open up our terminal, stop the app from running, and then run git add dot git commit -m, and then we can do a meaningful commit message such as implement e-commerce functionality. And finally, we can do a git push. This is going to automatically trigger out the deployment, but just to check that that is truly the case, we can go to our payload, expand our browser fully, go to overview, and you can see the status is online and it is currently building. And we got an error, which is totally fine. Whenever I deploy something for the first time, in most cases, I have an error. It could be the envs, it could be TypeScript errors, whatever it is, we're gonna get to the bottom of it together. And before doing that, just ensure that your proper commit is getting deployed, because sometimes it can be late. In my case, it is, but you can always click trigger redeploy manually after pushing to ensure that the correct commit gets redeployed. So let me just reload the page right now. And if we go down, we can see some of our errors here. We can see that the build has failed. Specifically, it's a TypeScript error. And this happens often. I mean, think about it. We've just built a huge e-commerce application with a couple hundred files, if not even more. It's possible that we forgot to add a type somewhere. So, just in this case, you can go to your code and you can go to next.config.js. Within here, right at the top, you can add a new object called TypeScript. And you can simply say ignore build errors is set to true. Usually, in a real-world application, we would go across the entire application and fix all the errors, which I still recommend you to do. But just to finalize the deployment process, we can do it like this, and then just do another commit by saying git add dot git commit -m ignore TypeScript. I'm gonna add in parentheses only for now, so we know that we have to get back to it, and then a git push. Now, I believe that Payload will automatically figure out that we started a new push, and you can see I didn't even have to reload the page, and it says building ignore TypeScript. So let's give it a couple of minutes, and hopefully this time it is green. And there we go. This time the build is complete. So let's scroll up and click on your URL. That's going to lead you to the deployed website. Now, looking at it at first, everything seems good. We have our navbar, we have our hero image, but if we scroll down, you can notice that we don't really have any categories right here, or at least it appears to be that way. But don't worry about that at all. We're gonna re-upload those images so everything works perfectly, even in production. Let's start by closing all of the other files we currently have open, and let's simply navigate to /admin. Then you can sign in with the same account you've had before, and then go to media. Remember how we implemented that plugin? Well, now is the time to re-upload the images, and every image we add from now on is going to go to the file storage bucket that's deployed online so we can retrieve all of those assets. But that goes for all of the assets we have deployed before. So if we go to the page 2, you can see all of the hero images, Twitter links, everything we uploaded before, we need to re-upload it. So go to media, and then let's start one by one. First, let's go to Facebook, remove it right here, and then re-upload it. We can go to our public admin UI, footer, and we can add Facebook. There we go, that is saved. We can again go to the page 2, we can do Instagram. As a matter of fact, let me just open up all of these in a new tab. There we go. That's going to make it just a bit simpler. I don't think we need those. And then on page 1, you can do the hero as well if it's not here for you. For me, it is. And also all the other products we have uploaded so far. Then just go one by one. This is the Instagram one. Remove it, select the file, and re-add it. Close it, remove it, re-add it, save it. And just keep repeating that for other images. Here we have our hero as well. So let me just add a new hero. That's going to be under admin, hero, hero1. And finally, we have the last 4. This is going to be the hero2. There we go. And we have the 3 categories. So let's add laptops. That's going to be right here under categories, laptops. Then we have our phones. So under categories and then phones. And finally, we have the watches. So right here, we can add watches and press save. In case you need to re-add them for the product you have added so far, you can also add them here. I have already done that. So I have my laptop, my phone, and my watch. So with that said, if we now go back to our new deployed website, you're going to see that the hero is here, as well as our categories. Deals of the month look great. Feel free to add some image right here on the right by playing a bit with the layout. And we have our footer icons. And if we navigate to laptops, we have nothing there as we forgot to attach the laptop category to this laptop. But we do have a phone, a laptop, and a watch. And as you can see, all of it is functioning perfectly in our deployed application. How great is this that you can have your deployed application up and running in no time? If you go to checkout, you're going to notice a little error, but that's totally okay. We simply have to update our env keys to ensure that we are now in production and not in the test version. With that in mind, if you had any issues with the deployment whatsoever, just message Payload on their Discord. They're really prompt in replying, and they'll quickly help you out. With that said, huge thanks to Payload not only for sponsoring this video, but for creating such a comprehensive piece of software that will, in my opinion, become the official Next.js CMS, especially with the changes they're making right now. And as I said before, don't really worry about the pricing because their Vercel free tier is coming soon and you'll be able to deploy your projects freely. And with Next.js in mind, I must not forget to mention our Ultimate Next.js 14 course. I've worked for months on this course to ensure that it is the best and the most up-to-date Next.js course out there, the most comprehensive one as well. If your goal is to learn how to develop modern web applications like these companies do, and truly use Next.js the right way, the way it's supposed to be used with all of these new features, to go from this to this, then you're in the right place. Because we're going to do it with deep dives, build and deploy a complex app, and active lessons so you can test your knowledge. All of that is covered, and the link is in the description. With that said, once again, huge props to you for coming to the end of this video and building such a phenomenal e-commerce application. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.